Ladies and gentlemen of the interwebs, Jessica Rose, computational biologist, PhD scientist on the right, with some words of wisdom.
We're starting to see cancers roll in now like we never have before. And it kind of did start happening around 2021. We need to start sequencing people's tumors. Like we need to start staining them, doing immunohistochemical studies to look for, signs of amyloids, for example. We need to start looking for the component parts of the plasmids. If we find them, then we have definitive evidence. I mean, all of these things that need to be done right now to save people's lives, to bring to light that nobody should get injected with this stuff anymore, not even one person. It's all going to be delayed. I imagine maybe in 5 years they're going to start doing this, but 5 years too late, man. Like, how many more people are going to die and get sick? Because of stuff we know.
Right. The industry is panicked about this relationship between the shots and rising incidence of cancer. And we know this because Charlotte Cooper-Wasser and her co-author at Brown University wrote a paper, it was like came out 4 months ago in the journal Oncotarget that that identified signals for the very first time. At least that, I mean, other people had identified the signals, but that was actually published in a peer-reviewed place. The journal was taken offline. The paper was made inaccessible. I had to get a copy of it myself.
DDoS attack was done on the journal, like on the actual website. Yeah. I believe is the right term for like a week. You couldn't download the paper.
Yeah, that's right. And we hosted it ourselves, and we got thousands of more than 5,000 downloads in a 24-hour period. But that is a tremendously that is a terrifying prospect. That is
it's a bad time to start coughing when you're talking about the potential nefarious effects of the COVID shot in the context of COVID-19. Let me finish this.
The connection between those two things is like the unsayable reality.
Well, we'll see what happens when this airs, as it is airing currently right now on CommuTube, which apparently has tweaked the algorithm and screwed things. I won't say screwed things up, but people are noticing trends on CommuTube right now. I made the joke rather cynically. If you don't know who Jessica Rose is, welcome to the channel. She's been on, I want to say at least 10 times, well over a half dozen. It might even be a dozen times. She's a computational biologist. She's a PhD, wicked smart, as they say, and has always been, dropping the truth bombs when it comes to COVID, when it comes to the shot. And now, what many people have been hypothesizing for a while now, I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. YouTube, get all the disclaimers you want. I'm not a doctor, but I am a hypochondriac. People are starting to observe signals now between temporally the administration of the COVID shot and cancers. Now, I jokingly say, although they're actually saying it, that whatever increase in cancers you're noticing are attributed to any other possible excuse. Climate change, literally, energy drinks, supplements, unhealthy lifestyle, or the more plausible explanation, they say, attributable to the lockdowns, people living unhealthy lives as a result of combating COVID. I jokingly say we're going to get to a point in time where they are literally going to say the COVID shot prevented even more cancers. And had it not been for the COVID shot, because apparently the COVID shot, the mRNA experimental gene therapy therapeutic, and these are all terms now that doctors are using. It's not me. It's a miracle drug. It's like it's more miraculous than ivermectin. It's more miraculous than hydroxychloroquine. It's like it's reducing heart attacks. It's increasing fertility. I'm exaggerating just so that everybody understands, but they literally say that there's a correlation between the COVID shot and reduction in heart attacks. They don't just lie to you. They tell you the contrary of reality. We're getting to the point where signals are being observed, and Jessica's been sounding the alarm. We've been talking about it, in terms of the spike protein going throughout the body and causing amyloids, which are misfolded proteins, and it could cause, certain other health issues. We're getting there. It's going to be undeniable. In 5 years from now, there will be lawsuits, much like there are lawsuits now against, other pharmaceutical companies for having misrepresented safety signals, done all sorts of chicanery. Pfizer, I'm looking at you. But we're going to get to a stage of the universe where they're literally going to say there's an increase in cancer. It's for a number of other reasons, nothing to do with the COVID mRNA experimental gene therapy therapeutic. But had it not been for that, it would be even worse. Just wait. But if you're not following Jessica Rose, you got to follow her. I don't know who Jeffrey Tucker is as much offhand, but Jessica Rose is amazing, wicked intelligent, has been following this from the get-go, and has been one of the braver voices that was willing to call it out at the time. I wanted to start with a fishing video because it might have been more interesting, but I wanted to make sure that the audio levels and everything are up to snuff. People, let me do a public service announcement before we get into our sponsor and before we get into tonight's show. It's going to be an amazing show. And to the chat, they were saying, "Are we going to be talking about the Candace debate?" I think I've analyzed and talked about the Candace debate enough, both on my channel, on Alex Jones yesterday. I may, talk about it some more, but the week has come and gone. The news has come and gone, and I think I've added whatever I think I had to add to that discussion. But we are going to talk about the Tyler Robinson filing, Luigi Mangione's plea, and a bunch of other stuff. But before we get there, I just want to play this. I was at the Deerfield Pier today fishing, and I actually ran into someone who watches the show, and they say, "Hey, you're Fryhead, aren't you?" I was like, "Yeah, I am."
Yeah, what do you have?
Check this out. Look at this thing down here.
I can't.
I hooked. It must have been a 15 or 20 pound barracuda.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then they were lowering the
Dad, I
net.
gotta put these fish back in the water.
Yeah, we got some camera work from a kid who. What kind of camera work is this? I'm gonna have to work on my kids. Okay, whatever. I want to look at this fish when it jumps out of the water. Right. It was a beautiful, beautiful barracuda. But there's a
You can eat them.
To this.
Okay, wait. We're gonna bring it in there.
We did see somebody on the pier who had a barracuda. I don't think they were going to eat it, and I'll tell you
He's
why.
gonna thrash it.
Come on. Where's the fish? Where's the fish? Listen,
All right.
look at the size of that thing.
Might not get this.
I'm on a super light
So what I got,
tackle
so
rod that someone
slide it
gave
into
us.
this net.
I had a very thick wire leader on it.
Yeah.
And I actually hooked the barracuda, and
Okay.
wait until you see this. It jumped out of the water when I caught it at first, and like I was hero on the pier
Okay.
until
Drag him in here.
look at this. He's thinking about it. They lower this net. It's a big ring net that
That
try to
energy
slide it
out?
in,
Oh, it's out.
and it snapped the line. It didn't snap the line. It snapped the metal wire leader. It snapped the wire leader, which was thick, bulky metal. Now, the public service announcement in all of this. Okay, get out of here. Kid just peeked his head and then said he's sad that we lost the fish. The public service announcement in all of this, you can't eat or you should not eat barracuda because it's got it's called ciquitoxin, a dangerous natural neurotoxin that causes Ciquitera fish poisoning. It comes from tiny algae near coral reefs, builds up in small fish, and concentrates in large predators like barracuda. You can't smell it, cook it away, or otherwise get rid of the poison, and it can make you sick. Now, it's not particularly fatal. 0.1% of people die from it, so that's 1 in 1,000, but it will make you very, very sick. And you don't want to get sick, people, because if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. Which brings us into our sponsor for today's show, people. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And a quick subsidiary, similarity is if you don't have your wealth, you have less health, wealth, then happiness. But people, if you don't control your wallets, you don't have control over your money. This is a paid advertisement for Rumble Wallet. They're sponsoring this portion of the show. It's our Sunday show. It's our best show of the week. People, if you want my attention, there are 2 good ways to get it, and one of which is to do a Rumble rant. And when you do a Rumble rant through the Rumble Wallet, it's going to get prioritized. If you send one, I'll see it, I'll respond to it. Simple as that. For a limited time, You can start your wallet with $5 in US stablecoin, that's USAT, for tipping Rumble creators like me by entering my exclusive promo code VIVA5 when you sign up. Now, questions, hot takes, stuff you really want me to react to, don't bury it in the chat. Put it in a rant that I will see. And here's the move. Scan the QR code. Let me show you the QR code. You're going to want to see this. Where is the QR code? It's right here. Got to open this up and show you this QR code so that you know what to do. Scan the QR code. Download the Rumble wallet. Rumble has been innovating the way people preserve their wealth, keep their wealth from seizing from governments, frozen bank accounts. Scan the QR code or use the link in the description. Download Rumble wallet. Try it for yourself. Don't forget, use code VIVA5 for $5 in tipping USAT. Sending a tip is easy. Open the chat like you're reading a Rumble rant and hit the pay the wallet thing. It's basically a VIP lane. You want a shout out? You want me to actually engage with what you're saying? I engage with a lot of the conversation anyhow, but we always get to the rants. Use Rumble wallet. Claim your $5 USAT with VIVA5. Then send the rant. I'm watching for them. Restrictions apply, people. There are a limited number of entries available. Terms and conditions apply. See the description below or in the description. That's where it is. And that's what you can do right there now. Okay, people. What I was going to say before we get into tonight's show, I got to make sure Barnes is in the backdrop. Let me make sure that we're good across all the platforms. If you give a super chat over on CommieTube and you're going to get angry if I happen to miss it, don't do it. Don't give a rant if I don't read it. You're going to be angry. I don't like people feeling miffed, grift, whatever the heck it is. I thank you all for the support. And I do my best to get to all of these super chats, but those sometimes I miss. Rumble rant. I figured out a way to cache all of the Rumble rants, and we can do things like this. Look at this, people. Yeah, check this out before we get into the intro topic. We got stick to your day job and stop writing your own ad lead-ins coming from a place of love. Stick to your day job and stop writing your own ad lead-ins coming from a place of love. Jordan, thank you. No, I don't know. People, I'm going to make sure that we're good across all platforms here and look at what's going on in our vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Peeps, if you want to join our community, go to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Here's the link for that in the description. I'm not going to get into too much of the Candace stuff. I just, saw a clip of Hassan Piker earlier today, and it's worth playing, and it's worth digesting what Hassan Piker is saying right here.
I wouldn't say that I'm on her side on this issue. I am, let's just say I'm spiritually on the sidelines on this. Because, on the one hand, my brain tells me something entirely different than what my heart is championing, if you know what I mean, okay? If you're picking up what I'm putting down. On the one hand, I want to be logical. I want to be rational about this case. But then on the other hand, I'm thinking to myself, I can't speak out against this queen. I can't speak out against this queen because this is a queen that successfully and single-handedly undermined the Republican initiative to martyrize Charlie Kirk and use that example to crack down on political dissent. She dropped a grenade on the discourse. So I'm with her. It's hard. It's hard for me. My brain says, no, it's probably Tyler Robinson. But my heart says, go, Candace, go. Keep cooking. Does that make sense? I'm on the sidelines. I don't even want to course correct. I don't.
It is quite wild when you appreciate when they say the quiet part out loud, or once you understand. They had their debate on Friday. It's an amazing thing living in two alternate realities where the Candace fans say she won, Andrew Wilson fans say he won. I'm not more in the middle. I've said everything I have to say about this. Andrew Wilson had his L's of the debate, one of which was, or at least the one that is serving as the basis to say he lost the debate. He said it was a murder charge when it was aggravated murder. And then he couldn't name the other 6 charges, which were they're paired. 2 counts of tampering with a witness, 2 counts of obstruction of an investigation, and then 1 count of discharge of a firearm in front of children. But he said murder instead of aggravated murder. And this is the own that, there's a concept called Parkinson's law of triviality. If you don't know about it, Parkinson, not the guy who, I don't know if he had anything to do with Parkinson's disease, but he was an economist. And I talk about a few of his principles every now and again. Parkinson's law of mundanity, Parkinson's law of triviality. There's a bunch of them. And one of which I think is Parkinson's law of mundanity, or it's Parkinson's law, I forget exactly which one, is a principle that the time it takes to accomplish a task will expand to fit the time you have to accomplish that task. So, it's sort of an iteration of, if you want something done, give it to a busy man. If you need to mail a letter and you're super busy, it'll take you 5 minutes. If you need to mail a letter and you have all morning to do it, you'll go to the post office, you'll get an envelope, you'll come back home, you'll realize you didn't have the stamps, you go back to the office, you get the stamps, and then you screwed up on the address, so you have to do it again. Parkinson's law of triviality is that which is simple to understand is that which people are going to sink their hooks into and focus on the most. The example that I've given, when I describe it, is you have your board meeting. But this happens in real life. You have the lawyers getting around and they're talking about the affairs of the law firm, and talking about complex firewalls and China walls and how you keep things separated from other people, conflict of interest. Those matters. How to maximize shareholder value or how to maximize firm profit. Nobody's going to have it. It'll come, it'll go. Take 5 minutes to discuss. Talk about the Christmas party and where should it be, what should be served, who should be there. They'll talk about it for an hour, because it's a simple thing to understand. It's something that everybody can have an opinion about, and it's not something that requires any degree of speciality to formulate an opinion on. What's his face name? Andrew Wilson didn't name the charges when asked about it, and then he went on to make an even bigger mistake, which is accuse Candace of having done something, which, even if she had done it, I'm not sure that she did, but even if she had done it, gotten help, looked on her phone, he would have no way of proving it. And so in what was an L, he didn't name the charges, and then he goes on to suggest that she had help, and then she goes into her phone and shows him that she didn't. This is the biggest victory lap that everybody's taking now to show that Andrew lost the debate and Candace knew it. Whatever you think about Candace, let me take this back out. Whatever you think about Candace, she's got pretty good recall. I would even say great recall. She's got great recall and an even greater imagination, but she's got great recall. And so she can pull things up and listen when, Andrew Wilson's got a pretty good recall as well. When he didn't know what the charges were, it allows everybody out there to say he knew nothing about the case, and therefore I disregard not only everything he said, but everything that Candace said that was problematic. I don't know who this person is. Church Sermons says, Candace Owens, I think OJ was set up by the foreign French Jewish mercenaries. Regular person, I disagree. Where's your evidence? Candace Owens, I have none. But can you tell me what OJ was charged with? Regular person, murder. Candace Owens, wow, it was 2 counts of murder with special circumstances. How could you not know that? OMG, nothing but about this case. I won, LOL, Candace Cultus. OMG, she's cooking Slay Queen. Andrew probably should have known that, shouldn't have gone into the thing afterwards. But like I've been saying, the entire debate about the overwhelming evidence was a debate that nobody should be having at this point in time, because it hasn't gone to trial yet. We're at the stage of the preliminary hearing, probable cause. It's not a question of overwhelming evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. Having that argument is, in fact, legally premature. It does, to some extent, not to some extent, it does, violate innocent unless proven guilty. And it's not the right time to have it, because it adjudicates guilt before the defense has had a chance to enter into the full adversarial process, to test the prosecution evidence and to present their own. And you have your full adversarial process, and it's after a trial that you then say, was the evidence overwhelming? Dude was shaking his foot. He wasn't shaking his foot like a nervous schoolgirl. I mean, I look at it and say he's shaking his foot because he was frustrated having to listen to this nonsense. But everybody sees what they want in this debate. The internet has jumped on that. He didn't know the charges. Aggravated murder versus murder. My point is, all aggravated murder is murder, but not all murder is aggravated murder, because one carries with it the death penalty, the other doesn't. Setting all of that aside, when you get into the discussion, and at the end of the day, we had I asked a friend to just, tell me, how many times did she say feels like, I feel, it feels in this debate? It was like 50 times. Feels like, that's just my opinion. What evidence do you have of any Zionist Jewish involvement? None. But I don't believe the narrative. And, there's that meeting in the Hamptons. There's the text messages. Well, that's not evidence of anything. Well, I don't really have any evidence. It's my opinion. And what people took away from that debate, because they want to choose to continue following Candace and choose to say Andrew Wilson lost the debate, he couldn't name the charges. I say big flipping deal. It'll be an unforced error that will allow people to then say, ha ha, you didn't know the charges. Therefore, I go back to listening to Candace, even though she literally admitted in that debate, in that discussion, she had no evidence of Israeli involvement other than something I'm still trying to fact check is whether or not Joe Kent told her or ever publicly confirmed that there were 12 Israeli cell phones on the ground, that it was her opinion that she wasn't actually accusing Erica Kirk of being complicit in a cover-up or the murder, but rather complicit in promoting a false narrative that Tyler Robinson was the lone gunman. And that the Panguitch receipt that so many people built their case on, their doubt at this point, she never tied it to Tyler Robinson. But now you got Hassan Piker coming out and basically saying, dude, I think it's more likely than not Tyler Robinson. This is Hassan Piker. This is not me. I'd say I would have zero difficulty entertaining the theory that it was someone else on the roof, Lance Twiggs. They haven't kind of looked the same. But set that aside. We haven't gone to trial yet. There hasn't been the adversarial process. Hassan Piker's coming out and saying, I love what I see going on because in the recent history, and it was the question that Charlie was answering when he was murdered about trans violence. And in the last several years, there have been a number of incidents that conservatives, right-wingers, have, I won't say latched onto because they're legit issues that put the emphasis on trans violence or violence by trans individuals against Christians, against society. And now Hassan Piker loves it. You're watching, whether it's by design, whether it's deliberate, whether it's a happenstance accident, a fissuring of the conservative rights. I mean, not that there's not what happening on the left as well, but it's very, very fortunate for the left that you have this divide. What I do refer to as some form of mass formation psychosis, because the level of vitriol and the level of zealotry, nobody was coming and saying like in the Brian Cole Jr. or Jan 6, nobody, the zealots don't come and hijack every post with their zealotry. I don't even know if that's a word. They're doing it in this case. They did it in Sandy Hook. I noticed it online with Alex Jones. Whether or not it's organic, whether or not it's mixed inorganic, organic, there's some shit going on that is very, very convenient for the left. Hassan Piker loves it because now instead of the focus being on whatever online groups they had of these individuals who knew apparently in advance what was going to happen and took pride in it afterwards, which happened to be the 2S LGBTQIA plus trans community. Now the focus is on Israel, and Hassan loves it in a double way. Get to focus on Israel, even though Candace admitted no evidence, and you take the attention off trans violence or whatever violence there might happen to be within the trans community. And so, Hassan likes it. When your adversaries are making a mistake, don't interfere. If a man wants to hang themselves, give them more rope. I see Robert Barnes in the backdrop. I'm going to bring him in. We're going to talk about this. Robert, sir, how goes the battle?
Good. How's the sound and everything?
I think the sound looks good. I'm going to let you introduce the topics, and then I'll go to locals and see what they have to say. I just look so much bigger than you, and I don't like it because I'm not bigger than you, Robert. Why did she want the three? Let me just realize, why did she want the 300 stuff? Oh, he offered it, but she took it, I guess. Yeah. Whether or not she demanded it or whether or not she took it, at the end of the day, if she netted at least 300,000 from that debate, and from what the aggregator of super chats said, $21,000 in super chats on her stream during that debate. Robert, how's it? What do we have on the evening roll?
We got the deep state cases, including Steve Baker's defamation defense, against the likely January 6th pipe bomb placer, a CIA asset.
Wait, Robert, let me interrupt you. At the risk of you blowing everything up in your office, can you turn your gain up?
Mm-hmm.
This is how Robert's going to get. Apparently,
actually,
Robert.
The gain was already all the way up to the max.
Okay, put your mic next to your face. Get your mic closer. I'll lower mine so that we can then stabilize it.
It won't stay for some reason. It's drifting. So
let me see here. Mic settings.
That's about as good as I can get it.
Hold on, I can do this here. Automatically adjust mic volume. I'm going to put you up all the way. Okay, try it now, and let's just see if I just made it too loud.
How's it now?
I'm going to let the audience. I heard you got electrocuted, Robert. Are you shocked yourself
Yeah, I
last
did
week?
trying to fix some electric stuff. I gotta fine tune some of the podcasting setup here. So but
Okay,
that's-
the audience locals is telling me that's better. I turned up your gain via studio. So, all right, sorry, Robert. So, deep state cases: Luigi Mangione, Tyler Robinson, Jan 6, or say at least Steve Baker's motion
Well,
to dismiss.
James Comey's motion to dismiss, and a couple of Epstein-related cases, grand jury records, and a civil suit brought by a journalist to get more disclosure of records that have been disclosed to date. So that's the deep state cases. Then we got the Trump cases, the Harvard DOJ case, a trade court ruling on a different set of Trump tariff policies, and Trump asking the Supreme Court to stay the injunction on his building the ballroom. Then we got a First Amendment case concerning intellectual diversity requirements in state universities. We have a Second Amendment case concerning challenging Denver's laws limiting the right to either conceal and carry or open carry, to carry at all if you're a non-resident, as well as the Trump administration finally getting around to reconsidering its enforcement of the National Firearms Act after the One Beautiful Bill erased its tax component. The Idaho abortion law goes to an Idaho federal court. It decides to carve out a broad constitutional exception for the health of the mother. How will that hold up as it goes up the appellate food chain? Election law cases, Trump's mail requirements for trying to regulate that to the Postal Service continues to get intermittently enjoined. It looks like the Supreme Court may be asked to make a decision quicker before the November elections roll around. Texas election law gets upheld in the Fifth Circuit after the 50th attack on it gets reversed again. And then the Voting Records Act, or the voting records requirements, the Sixth Circuit refuses to enforce the DOJ's demand for Michigan's voting registration records. We mentioned the Mangione and Tyler Robinson criminal cases, including the motion. It was mischaracterized by Candace Owens as a motion to dismiss. That's not actually what it is. It's the post-preliminary hearing briefing on whether certain aggravated murder charges can be brought and whether an obstruction charge can be brought, as well as some sentencing enhancements that whether they can bring that now or not, they're just preserving their option to do so. 1776 Law Center brings suit in California for all of its crazy eco-tyranny rules. And the question is, does it violate the Commerce Clause to the U.S. Constitution? We'll be discussing that case. And a bonus case, the Babylon Bee is suing New Mexico over its limitation and disclosure requirements over AI memes if it concerns the wondrous integrity of a candidate. So that and more on this Law for the People.
It's going to be a good one, and we're not going to belabor the Candace angle anymore. We'll start with Tyler Robinson's brief, mischaracterized by Candace as a motion to dismiss, but also kind of mischaracterized by some of the media, which says that they admitted that Tyler was the shooter in it. And I hope in my analysis it was clear, I fleshed that out, comparing it to the headlines versus the actual brief. But there were some interesting things in there, which, Robert, you'll tell me whether or not you think they qualify as not admissions, but acknowledgments of certain facts because of that which was never challenged at the preliminary hearing. The brief basically, I don't know how many pages was it, 30 some odd pages, but it was basically
41 pages, I think.
41 pages. And the bulk of it can be summarized as, you take the prosecution evidence, not for granted, but in the most favorable light. You say, look, even if you accept X, Y, and Z, aggravated murder charges have not been proven, therefore take the death penalty off the table. The reason for which they argued that the aggravated murder should come off the table and not murder per se, and again, they did not admit that Tyler Robinson took the shot. Whether or not they admitted that some of the video evidence showed Tyler Robinson, we might be splitting hairs here. They said, look, the reason why it can't be aggravated murder is because the shot didn't put anybody else at risk. And because not so much the shot was a good shot, but it was a single shot, no follow-up shots. Nobody was behind Charlie Kirk that could have taken the bullet if it had gone through him. So therefore, it's not aggravated murder, it's murder. Take the death penalty off the table. We'll get into the other ones afterwards, but on that particular element, what say you, Robert?
So the first thing is I see people like Jimmy Dore and others challenging the quality of the defense counsel team that Tyler Robinson has. And, he, Lionel Media, Clint Russell, Liberty Lockdown, people whose opinions I have previously really enjoyed and still do enjoy in a broad category, but they're going down a Sandy Hook style rabbit hole, chasing, trying to, replicate, imitate, and just assume the validity of the Candace Owens theories of the world. They've gone full Candace. Never go full Candace. Just word of the wise. They're torching their credibility in live time. And I get that there'll be a bunch of cheerleaders cheering them on, seal clapping, like there was for QAnon, like there was for let's pursue Dominion instead of mail-in voting issues during the 2020 election, like every other rabbit hole that they actually discredit legitimate questions and legitimate inquiries about whether there were accomplices and accessories before and after the fact in the murder of Charlie Kirk. It's quite clear they become obsessed with exonerating Tyler Robinson, which is a fool's errand, and they become obsessed with incriminating Turning Point, which is as factually baseless as it is morally repugnant.
Hold on, stop. Robert, your audio just went gobbledygook, and I wanted to make sure it was not me. Say something again.
Check.
Okay, no. Step out of the studio, come back, and your audio just went full
really?
domo arigato, Mr. Roboto. That's it. I can finish Barnes's thought there, but I won't. I will add something while Barnes goes in and out. People are going to say Barnes is saying that they're torching their credibility, and the amount of times I've seen people say, "Viva, you're going to die on this hill. You're torching your credibility over this case." First of all, if that's what happens over my assessment, I will certainly live with that. One thing I can tell you, up until now, my assessments, my calling out, and my fact checking has proven to be quite accurate, and more accurate than those who built entire episodes of their daily live streams on this, talking about how it was impossible for Tyler Robinson to get from Panguitch to Orem because he had dinner at the steakhouse. Now that we know that receipt has never been tied to Tyler Robinson. I said there's still people out there. Someone said, "Viva, you're going to apologize for calling that image that Candace provided as altered?" I was like, hell no, I'm not going to apologize, because it was altered. And the explanation for how it was altered is that, have you ever seen video? Have you ever seen cars look like compressed little cubes like you saw in the surveillance footage? Like, that's what the footage was, to make it look what you think conforms to reality, even if you think it's more accurately conforming to reality, is the alteration of the photo. My only mistake might have been I said AI enhancement, upscaling, as opposed to just Photoshop. But it was clearly modified, even compared to a properly corrected surveillance correcting for fisheye. Those images were modified somewhere. And I'm telling you, that will prove to be true, in as much as when I said, the receipt didn't prove anything. Sorry, Robert. So I was talking about the people torturing their credibility. They'll say the same thing of us, but I'll live with my assessment proudly. So.
I mean, we've been down this road before, and who turned out right said that going down the Dominion path was a distraction from the consequential, substantive areas of pursuit. And what it'll be misconstrued as is saying like the 2020 election was fine, or saying that the any other aspect of any of these, or saying that the QAnon theories challenging deep state corruption meant that we approved of the deep state corruption when we just disapproved of QAnon's theories. The same will be happening here. So, for the record, once again, you were on with Alex Jones over the weekend. I was on with him a couple of weeks ago, right after the preliminary hearing. I believe there are substantial evidentiary leads to investigate about whether or not all the culprits have been identified as accessories before and after the fact criminally, as co-conspirators in the murder of Charlie Kirk. I believe that the feds covered up an investigation into that could have led to such culprits. Even when Joe Kent was trying to do it, they shut it down. I believe that there's an unexplained to this date security lapse by Utah Valley University. Just research Utah Valley University and intelligence agency ties. It's not a big secret. Who lied and misled Turning Point into believing that roof would be secure that day, and telling them they couldn't have a drone, that actually they had a legal right to be present, and claiming that they had secured the whole building when they never did. And so I think and then the people that appear to have advance notice, some of the peculiarity and oddity of some of Tyler Robinson's statements, questions, and comments lead me to believe that he was trying to tip people off in his Discord community and his lover, Lance Twiggs, so that they could have advance notice that the cops may be knocking on their door soon. So I think there's substantial evidence to believe there's accessories before the fact and after the fact. I think somebody radicalized Tyler Robinson, and it wouldn't surprise me if it ended up being connected in some way, shape, or form to the Israel lobby, to government agencies alike. That's where I think deserves and warrants pursuit, but almost nobody's pursuing that because they're busy running around trying to pretend Tyler Robinson wasn't there that day. So first aspect, these false statements, defamatory statements by the Jimmy Dores of the world, that these are state-appointed, bad, poor lawyers that don't know what they're doing. It's complete hogwash. There's 4 lawyers defending. He has a team of lawyers defending Tyler Robinson. 2 of them are state lawyers, state of Utah lawyers. 2 of them are federal lawyers, are from California. So 2 Utah lawyers, 2 California lawyers. The top 2 lawyers, the Utah state lawyer, is considered one of the best criminal defense lawyers in the whole state. Indeed, it's a lawyer that's been appointed by the Supreme Court of the United States to review evidentiary rulings. The lawyer that comes out of San Francisco is one of the top death penalty lawyers in the entire nation. He's someone that is a go-to person in any death penalty case. The lawyer from LA is a well-regarded, well-respected criminal defense lawyer in general. And then they have a local lawyer who's done a lot of different kinds of criminal cases in that jurisdiction. So they've got a quartet of some of the best legal defense that Tyler Robinson could have. So anybody telling you those are bad lawyers are full of it. They're either lying or because it doesn't fit into their pre-existing narrative that everything has to shove into, they refuse to get behind it. So the reality is that Candace Owens and that crowd are useful idiots who are distracting and detouring people from a more meaningful investigation into potential conspiracies involved in connected to the murder of Charlie Kirk. There's no better advocate for the Israel lobby than Candace Owens because of how badly she is discrediting legitimate questions and inquiries by how she's going about it. The people wolfing down the Fed slop are the people wolfing down the Candace slop. And try to tell them, but they're going to go down their path and they're stuck with their path and they're going to not go away from it.
Fair question. Who's paying the 4 lawyers? Is it
they're state appointed. They've agreed to take this case by state appointment, which means they get very little compensation. Be blunt about it.
So, hold on. So what would be, not to say that finances is the only incentive for lawyers. Why do they take this case? Notoriety?
Because they're death penalty cause lawyers.
Okay.
Blunt about it. So there's a bunch of these. In any death penalty case, there's a group of lawyers who specialize in death penalty cases, who only take these death penalty cases, or who prioritize them, because they consider it a paramount principal duty. The 3 of the 4 lawyers involved are known as critics of the death penalty in one way, shape, or form. So Tom Mesereau, the famous lawyer who defended Michael Jackson, defended others, he would take often just straight pro bono death penalty cases across the country. Because it's in that criminal defense space, it's considered particularly important. So to slander them the way I've seen so many people do on the internet is just really Jimmy knows better. So that's my statement on that. Second, I've seen a lot of claims about what these statements were or didn't mean in the context of this motion. So it wasn't a motion to dismiss all the charges, as Candace Owens misunderstood. She was bragging about how she knew what the 7 charges were and Andrew Wilson did not. She didn't even know how to characterize a motion, a post probable cause memorandum. So you getting your legal education from her will get you miseducated real fast. But in the context of the case, what they were actually seeking is to, as you note, take the death penalty off the table and say that the aggravated murder charge, that enhancement from murder in the first degree charge, murder in the first degree in Utah only has a life sentence. Aggravated murder is what elevates it to a potential death penalty sentence.
Robert, you got to bring yourself back out and bring yourself back in because it went robo again.
What is causing that?
It's static. I don't. Rub your cables. Jiggle a cable.
Like this, you mean?
That's what. Click that thing in properly.
Oh, what do you mean in? Like this?
It's definitely a loose cable. Into where.
Okay.
Do that. Come back. Candace hacking his mic. I want to bring up Andrea Burkhart's tweet on this in a second. I like fact checking, Robert, in real time. What was this? Was this the Utah Valley maintains strong institutional academic intelligence ties through its Center for National Security Studies, Specialized UVU Open Source Intelligence Center. These programs actively partner with federal, state, and local law enforcement, including the Utah's Statewide Information and Analysis Center, SIAC. All right, good enough. And what was the other thing I was going to fact check? No, it's funny. Barnes has never had this problem before. And Alex Jones was having technical problems yesterday. This might be a systemic hack. I want to bring up. Andrea Burkhart's tweet. By the way, everyone should be following Andrea Burkhart's analysis of this, even though she's been called a Fed slopper. I never want to hear the word Fed slop again. I didn't even when Barnes said it. I didn't even like hearing it. Andrea Burkhart had this to say about the brief. Not surprising that the defense isn't disputing the state's evidence because they didn't raise any challenge to it at the hearing other than the general hearsay objection. There's no basis for them to argue that evidence is unreliable or fabricated because they didn't elicit any facts in the hearing to suggest it was. And I saw some people saying that this is the reason for which they didn't do it because they couldn't do it at the time of the preliminary hearing, that is, they couldn't challenge the state's evidence or they couldn't present their own, which is false, just false. They could have if they had the basis or the evidence to do it. And then some people say, well, how can they disprove the text messages? They didn't have the metadata of the cell phones. Also false. They did. They received it in March. And what I understand Andrea to be saying here, and I hope one day she'll come on the channel and talk about it, is what she's basically saying is there's no basis for them to argue the evidence is unreliable or fabricated because they didn't raise any facts to suggest it was when they had the opportunity. And some people saying they didn't do it because they couldn't do it at the time, which is wrong. They can't do it now because they didn't do it at the time when they had the chance. So all they can do is come in and say, taking it all for granted, we're not conceding Tyler took the shot, but it was only one bullet that only killed one person and therefore can't be aggravated murder. Where I think it's not quite so cut and dry is when they talk about the text messages and when they talk about Tyler in the video, that they didn't elicit any evidence at the time to suggest the text messages were fabricated. And I've got my theory as to why. Because they couldn't ethically if they know the text messages are in fact legitimate. Sorry, Robert, I was reading Andrea Burkhart's assessment of this. Let's see if it works now.
Check.
Okay, it's good. We're going to see if it goes. I'm going to measure the time to see if it goes robo again. So what you were talking about where we left off. Don't touch it, Robert. Don't even look at it. Okay, you were talking about the preliminary brief, what they argued at the hearing. See if you can pick up on your thought there.
Yeah, so essentially, if they believed there was good grounds to challenge the authenticity of any of the evidence, if they could challenge the authenticity of the video evidence, they could challenge the authenticity of the text messages, if they could challenge or contest his identification, if they had evidence that his DNA did not match the gun or the bullet or the screwdriver, if they had evidence that that gun wasn't his, if they had evidence that the bullet didn't match a bullet that could come out of his gun, a 30-06, 30 caliber bullet, if they had evidence that he was someplace else, like at a restaurant, having a steak dinner that would completely muck up the timeline, I guarantee you they would have brought it. So that was a sign that when people said that this evidence isn't legit, isn't credible, or coming up with the excuse, no, they would wait for trial for that. No, you wouldn't. You could blow up the whole case. You could blow it up in the court of public opinion, no less, because you could just have one little piece that everybody out there that's in that camp of not wanting to believe Tyler Robinson did this, was the one who pulled the trigger, would have jumped all over and hammered over obsessively. Candace would have run month-long shows on it. So they guarantee you, as skilled and competent and capable as these lawyers are, if there was any credibility to any of those claims out there, they would have put them out there at the preliminary hearing stage. So it's not that they're conceding that issue for trial, but it means they do not have a basis to contest it that's credible now. So and it's a sign, by the way, that all these claims are garbage. Like I knew the steakhouse claim was garbage because I guarantee you the defense lawyers would have presented it if there was any possibility he was really there. The people are pursuing some of the most ludicrous, trying to pretend Tyler Robinson wasn't there, trying to pretend he didn't send these texts, trying to pretend his parents didn't turn him in. Is living in a fantasy land that's even worse than the Sandy Hook didn't happen fantasy land, of which I get commentary to this day. I have people responding to the Candace Owens commentary saying, oh yeah, Barnes, you went along with Sandy Hook being real. You don't understand, it didn't happen. Those people are still out there. That's where the Candace kooks will be a decade from now. Tyler Robinson wasn't really there. He wasn't really there. It was someone else. It was French Legion. It was Egyptian airplanes. It was people hopping from underground and doing the shooting. No, it was an air gun. No, it was someone behind him. No, it was somehow Mormon bees. It will be whatever absurd asinine theory she puts forward, which discredits legitimate criticism and questions about the Charlie Kirk murder. So that's in the outset. I think they have brought a very robust challenge to the death penalty aggravated murder charge, because I saw a lot of confusion out there. They weren't saying that deliberately murdering Charlie Kirk didn't feed. They're like, what do you mean that it wasn't dangerous? It was dangerous to Charlie Kirk. It's because aggravated murder in Utah, in order to get the death penalty, requires you put people other than the person killed at risk, at serious substantial risk. So the question is, and what the defense, I think, probably sagely did, is let the government highlight how intentional, direct of a sniper assassination this was. By doing so, they were able to highlight in their memorandum, they went out of their way to prove that this was only targeted at Charlie Kirk. There was nobody else in the line of sight. There was nobody else that was nearby in a way that an assassin's bullet could cause it. That's the state's argument. The state's argument is other people. This is a public setting because but under the state's interpretation, any shooting in a public setting would automatically qualify for the aggravated murder charge. That isn't what if Utah legislature wanted that to be the law, that's what would be in the law. That isn't what's in the law. There are cases where a person killed somebody right next to somebody else swinging a shovel, and they said that is an aggravated murder because there was only one person likely and known to the shooter, or known in that case, known to the murderer, to be at risk. And so I don't think this judge has the courage to take the death penalty off the table, but I think legally they have a very good argument. And I think factually they probably have a very good argument. And so on that issue, it looks to me like there's at least a 50-50 shot that at some stage of this case, the death penalty gets taken off the table.
Let me ask you, I remember in my analysis where, I said, they're not conceding that Tyler Robinson took the shot, but in my view from that filing, Robert, am I wrong in concluding that they are conceding he was shot? Like is there any realm of the legal universe where they get to trial and then they suddenly say, we don't even believe that Tyler was shot?
You mean Charlie Kirk was shot?
Charlie Kirk, yeah. I mean, when people were saying they conceded that Tyler Robinson shot him, they just said it wasn't aggravated murder. I said, no, they didn't
dispute that. If they had any evidence to dispute the autopsy evidence, they would have presented that then, because that could be exonerating evidence for him on all charges. So, at least on the murder charge. And a lot of the enhancers that they're challenging also piggyback off the murder charge. So, of course, they would present that evidence. They would have presented that then. Now, is it a legal concession in the sense of what will happen at trial? No, it's not. None of this is a legal concession for trial. Did they have every incentive to question and contest any evidence they had a credible theory for that somebody else killed him, that Robinson had a full alibi by being present in a totally different place within the timeline? It's still there, static?
Yeah, no, just it keeps coming back. We're going to see if our chat can suggest why. Just hit refresh on your screen and you'll stay right in, and I'll bring you right back in.
Okay.
Just to refresh on the corner. I don't know if there's a delay and something's catching up, but it seems to be now. That was about 7 minutes after. Let me see. Oh, I love this. Sad. Viva has capitulated. Michael Upton 7531. Yeah. When you start off with sad, unless you're Donald Trump, it's not funny. It's an indication of very, very improper thinking. That's what my assessment was, that they didn't concede that Tyler Robinson took the shot, but they are admitting that Charlie Kirk was shot, which at least puts a bow in certain things. I'm surprised that Robert actually thinks that there's a good likelihood of the death penalty, not even a good, but that there's a meaningful chance. I mean, people are out there saying he doesn't get the benefit of having, even assuming that he did it, that he took a good shot and therefore didn't put others at risk. But Robert, how on earth?
I might just use my
prosecutor audio. How's that?
I'll let everybody tell us. It might. We're going to live with it tonight, anyhow.
Yeah.
So you actually think that there's not a meaningful chance, but the aggravated murder under Utah law is a killing that put others at risk. How on earth could anyone argue that this didn't put anybody else at risk, other than, I guess, the argument it was a straight sniper shot and nobody was behind Charlie Kirk to have been put at risk?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, that's why. It was the sniper's assassin. So how did who was put at? But it's twofold. It's that he knew he was putting others at risk by taking a sniper shot. And the argument would be a sniper shot doesn't put others at risk. And that it's not the kind of thing that the Utah legislature was intending for the death penalty. In other words, that I think most Americans, I assume, to be honest with you, that aggravated murder death penalty was just premeditation, intentionality, political targeting, other things like that. Doesn't appear to be the case. It appears that all that matters is whether or not there is whether others were knowingly and intentionally put at risk.
I mean, I think it's an obvious yes. I mean, a ricochet, anything, just shooting into a crowd or shooting into someone who's in a crowd.
But the argument was that he perfectly, the sniper shot put no one else at risk. That bullet was either going to, so you'd have to say, well, he knew he wasn't going to hit him. Well, that's hard to argue because you want to argue intentional murder. So he knew that there was a high risk that the bullet that he shot would hit somebody else. And the question is, what evidence did they present at the probable cause hearing? Like some sort of expert or something? I don't remember any such expert, if there was one. That said so that this shot was likely, remember, not just possible, likely, knowingly likely to cause somebody else's substantial harm.
Mm-hmm.
You look at some of the cases. I mean, there are cases where guy swings a shovel right near, not far away from someone else and hits that person, and they say nope. So in other words, it's almost like it's more like a drive-by shooting death penalty charge than a premeditation charge. So I think, given that, I think he's got good arguments. I think he's also got good arguments on the witness tampering claim. I don't think this judge, given the political high-profile nature of this case, he's gonna find probable cause on everything.
Let me just fill in for people who may not know, if you didn't watch the show on Friday or Thursday, whatever it was. The argument is that when he was texting Lance Twigg saying, "Don't talk to media, don't talk to police, this is what's going to happen," that wasn't witness tampering. That was what they call in law. I had seen the term for the first time. An altruistic motive and not a witness tampering motive. That was
my problem that I have a problem with ever criminalizing giving people advice of their constitutional rights. I know federal courts have done this, but I haven't liked it in any of those instances either. That your constitutional right is to take the fifth. Your constitutional right is to talk to a lawyer before you talk to anybody else. And so they're saying that him telling them their constitutional rights is a crime of witness tampering. That's not what witness tampering was meant to be. Witness tampering is supposed to be you instruct them to lie. You intimidate them. You try to do something to truly obstruct the process through criminal means. Not if you tell somebody their constitutional rights, it's now a crime because it'll make the government's job a little bit harder if those people assert their constitutional rights. So I don't like that witness tampering charge at all.
All right. Well, I mean, so maybe he gives a little bit of a give to both sides, and he's not taking the death penalty off the table now. I think what they'll probably end up doing is like you suggested, plea out if they remove the death penalty and life in prison, because they know the evidence better than Candace and Ian and Barron. And then maybe, I don't know what he's going to do. The timeline now, he's going to render his decision. I think it's in the first week of September. Is he going to, on the probable cause? Is that what's going to happen? He's going to render the decision on probable cause in September and adjudicate on this brief, the request of this brief at the same time?
Oh, I mean, that's what this is in aid of. This is all in aid of whether or not. They also challenge a bunch of sentencing enhancements. They argue they can challenge that before at the probable cause stage. As Nick Rekieta, who's covering this, Rekieta Law, pointed out, that's kind of dubious. That's probably something that can only be challenged at the sentencing stage, not the probable cause stage. So it's different than challenging whether they met the elements of aggravated murder, because that's a separate crime that carries a separate penalty. but it's the crime itself that's being challenged. The same is true of witness tampering. They're challenging the crime. By contrast, some of the other stuff they're challenging are simply enhancements for sentencing. So I think usually that's only challengeable after trial. There's an argument that you should have a right to a jury trial on it because it's effectively an element of the offense under the Apprendi-related decisions. But that's not usually a probable cause-based decision. But I think they're just trying to establish some legal argument on that to preserve it for appeal. But I think that I think he will find probable cause on everything. But I personally would not find probable cause on either witness tampering or aggravated murder based on the record as presented.
Well, we'll see what that happens there. It's we're going to have an answer in a couple of weeks, but yeah, I think it's obviously going to be probable cause. And I mean, the other charges are the insignificant ones in any event. So whether or not he succeeds on those on the merits, we'll see what the evidence is when it gets to trial.
He still faces life in prison. And I think that but I think they've established enough of a basis that if I was the prosecution, I would be concerned about the ability to secure a death penalty conviction that would be upheld on appeal, given the unique nature of the death penalty provisions in Utah law for aggravated murder. And what it really does is it sets up a good basis to cut a plea deal where he does life in prison. Probably won't be granted parole. That's something they could try to negotiate for, is life in prison with parole as the recommended sentence. The parole's not automatic. The parole board in Utah could always deny it, of course, much as they have people like Saran in California. And so but I think that the case is heading for that path. I don't think we will see a jury trial in this case. Not because Lionel Media thinks that he'll be killed or whatever else. I think Tyler Robinson knows he's guilty, confessed he was guilty. Everybody knows he's guilty, and they're just trying to get the lowest possible sentence for him.
Robert, we got the static again. So now we know it's not the microphone. We're going to get the internet figuring this out. We're going to have to refresh and come back in. And while you're at it, plug in the good mic so we can have that. What is the internet going? So it has to be not a connection issue. I'll let everybody see what they think is the cause of that. In the meantime, let's get to some of these super chats, Rumble rants. Mike is probably use USB if able. Static never in net. That's bearded to death. Well, now we know it's not even the mic. So Sparky6086 says, great to meet each of you at Chattanooga 1776 Law Center event. It feels like a big success to me. Great work. It was amazing. I'll get Bronze out of there for a second. Host Alex, we met the Alexes. It was phenomenal. Get your tickets for next year. I had not been to Chattanooga in decades, says Sparky. I was happy to observe. It seems to be a vibrant, beautiful city. It is, it's very beautiful. You can get used to living there. Robert, sir, let me hear this.
Check.
Okay, and I'm gonna bring your audio up again one more time. Edit mic settings. Okay, you're good there. Let me bring up Robert. I don't want to fall too far behind on the Rumble rants, and we had a couple that might be on issue. We got Ginger Ninja saying, the reason Barnes was staticky is now skipping occasionally is because the internet is getting behind and needs to catch up. Yeah, hopefully I'll talk more and maybe that'll happen. Punk Rock Ford says, can we pitch in to get Barnes a producer? I'll start with $5. A producer won't do anything for this, people. Some things are actually just beyond the infrastructure. West Pro says, why would he have more than one round? Well, that's a good point, Robert. But he didn't use the other rounds and they didn't actually put other people at risk is going to be the argument. Gorgeous Mayhem says, anyone who believes Candace's BS is retarded. Viva and Barnes stole $1 million from me. I don't have to provide evidence. Just watch my content. Randy Edwards says, Kirk was murdered for his faith and it was premeditated. This is what the death penalty exists for, pure treason. Robert's argument is going to be, that's not how the Utah law is drafted. And if that's how they wanted it.
Apparently not, yeah.
Ask Barnes if Keller House and Franken Sunday, which one was better, Cone Zone or Shibley's? Robert, do you understand that?
I do not.
Sorry, I don't mean to make fun of you. Great, Phil. I don't know what that means. If you are a logical, rational human, you think Andrew won. If you think Candace won, you are an emotional basket case. At the end of the day, the right loses, wasting time infighting. Capo Suit says, if Candace has any more kids, one of them is bound to be President Camacho. And Joden says, stick to your day job. Okay, fine. All right, Robert. Moving on. What's the next one?
Luigi, speaking of police, I think we predicted this back a ways, but Luigi Mangione has cut a plea in the federal charges where he's admitted to doing the murder. I know there are people running around saying he was innocent too. Not as many. There are others that just cheerled what he did and why he did it. it was a bit of an interesting backstory that he kept getting denied, coverage for a wide range of things related to his medical condition. And then when he pretended to be a big investor, they immediately responded in a very solicitous manner. That, does say something about what's going on in that part of the healthcare industry. But basically, what's interesting is it's the unique double jeopardy law under New York law. For example, if he had risked going to trial on the state charges, he would not have had a double jeopardy argument against the federal charges, because we've construed, I think incorrectly, but our federal system has concluded, our federal courts have concluded, that the double jeopardy clause of the Sixth Amendment, you can't be twice put in jeopardy for the same offense, has a dual sovereignty clause exception. So that if you're prosecuted by the state, you can also be prosecuted by the feds, which, if you understand the history of the state's relationship to the feds, that makes no sense. But, it is what it is. So that's how federal courts have interpreted it. So he was at risk of mutual and dual prosecutions. However, under New York state law, you can't be prosecuted for an offense if you've been prosecuted in any other jurisdiction for the same offense. So they apply the double jeopardy clause to other sovereigns. So by pleading in the federal case, he effectively negates the state case. He not only took the death penalty off the table with the federal plea, but he took the state case off the table, because now they have moved to dismiss on double jeopardy grounds, to where he's now probably only subject to federal prosecution and federal punishment and federal sentencing. Prosecutors are resisting that, but from my review of the law and from what most criminal defense lawyers familiar with the law in New York concluded, Mangione's team did a very good job of basically limiting his exposure to just the federal case and to getting the death penalty off the table and only be facing a federal sentence. And more importantly, if you're anybody that's an inmate, you always want to serve your time in federal time. You do not want to serve your time in a state prison. All the state prisons in the United States are worse than the federal prisons, but some by a long mile.
Is the rationale that he doesn't face the death penalty for a federal, or at least he struck a plea that removes the death penalty from the table? Would he have had the death penalty as a possibility at the state level?
I don't think so. I think New York doesn't allow it. I think it's more you don't want to do your time in New York, and you only want to have one judge sentence you, not two. So that that basically you just go all in on the federal charge.
Okay.
And that cabins what the sentencing risk is, and that by definition limits where you will do your time. So it was a smart move by the Mangione team.
Well, smart move. Because I just double checked now. Federal law has a more severe punishment for murder than New York state law, but at least this way, he takes the death penalty off the table. Will spend his time in a federal court, which
and a federal facility, and it'll still be a hero to a bunch of lefties.
It's surprising. In his case, they don't plead that he's a patsy. They sort of just celebrate the assassination. So it was a righteous killing because he was angry. But no. So and people are also saying they prosecute, they try to get you on the death penalty so that they coerce a guilty plea out of you. He did provide information in his agreement. That was information that only he would have in terms of how he went about it, how he got close to Thompson in the first place. So you can sort of rely on that confession as not being a fake confession because of information that only he had.
Quite frankly, it's quite evident he's not ashamed or bashful about it. He's still proud of what he did, is my takeaway. Now, that may lead to a higher sentence when he goes to federal court in December, but that's the impression I get, unless he, changes his tune between now and then. I didn't get the impression, by including that portion of the story in his plea, that, as soon as I told him I was a $50 million investor, then they were all solicitous. You got a sense of where his mindset is. It wasn't, I feel terrible about this. It's he feels justified in what he did.
Refresh your computer again, Robert. You went robotic, and I'll read some chats. So we're going to do this throughout the night. It'll be fine, people. It's going to be we'll keep the segments to 7 or 8 minutes, which seems to be when Barnes goes gobbledygook. King of Biltong's in the house, says, tired of the same old snacks. Upgrade to high-protein biltong from Biltong USA. Clean ingredients, great flavored, grass-fed, air-dried beef. Go to biltongusa.com. Use code Barnes for 10% off. And by the way, I'm trying to get everybody the link. We got our hot sauce on Biltong right now. I'll bring it up in a bit to show everybody. And And we're gonna. This is gonna be like the automatic end of segment. When Robert goes staticky, we're just gonna change topics. KC98501 says, I disagree with Robert. Carrying a scope rifle down your pants could easily have bent the optics and thrown the gun out of zero and miss Charlie and kill other people. That is all. Incidentally, when people say, like, how do you put the optics back on the rifle and get a clean shot? There are people who are smarter than me out there suggesting that, it's possible that you don't aim for a neck when you're trying to, sniper somebody. He might have been going for a torso and it was not aligned. The scope wasn't aligned properly and he hit him in the neck. So Rob, we have someone disagreeing with you that says, the way he did it, the scope could have been off and whatever, but we don't need to get back into that.
As to the irresponsible,
Robert,
but I don't recall, again, that's speculation at this point. They needed to present evidence. It's almost like the prosecutors didn't anticipate this line of defense to a degree. You know what I mean? In other words, that they should have presented evidence of how what he did created a substantial risk that he would know about that could cause substantial bodily harm to others. And they just assumed that a sniper assassin of someone who's assassinated within a crowd at some level, that would constitute aggravate a substantial risk known to him of killing others. And to be honest, you could tell by the way the defense approached it, they deliberately sandbagged the prosecution in that regard. In other words, which is smart tactical approach. They didn't preview this aspect. And so I think the prosecution missed their opportunity to present the evidence on those accords. I mean, everything those other people are saying or you're saying may be right. It just wasn't presented as evidence at the hearing.
And I was laughing because only there was a chat that said, Robert, I think you better tell your wife, a partner, to stop running the blender while you're talking. But it could be, I think it's the internet catching up and it's a bandwidth issue, but set it aside. When it's
like Gig City, supposed to have the fastest internet anywhere.
No, I know. Well, it's funny. Me too in Florida, but no. All right, Robert, what do we move on to now? We want to get into some of the Trump cases that have been.
Well, we got all the deep state cases. We got the Baker case, the Comey case, the Epstein cases. Then we got the Trump case. I think deep state cases and the 1776 case were the other top topics. There was no top topic in the vivabarneslaw.locals.com board, but the other ones were the deep state cases and the 1776 case in terms of order of priority.
Let's start with the James Comey one, because that's one where Robert, am a little concerned that they're going to succeed on the motion to dismiss. Comey's asking for the dismissal of the charges, basically saying that 8647 is slang, not a threat. No reasonable person would see it as an intent to commit violence. I mean, this is like how summarizing it, and that it doesn't meet the threshold for a true threat. I don't know if Brandenburg is the precedent here, but he's basically going with all of the arguments that everybody out there was going with, that because it has an alternate meaning to kill, to nix off a menu, that nobody would take it as a threat, and it was political hyperbole. Oddly enough, that's contradicting exactly what he said. What he did is like, I didn't even know what it meant. He's such an idiot, Robert. He says, I didn't know what it meant when I put it there, and I just thought the picture was cute. But his defense is that everyone would only know that it was political hyperbole and that it only meant to nix and not to kill. Is Brandenburg the precedent to measure this charge? And I mean, are you as not fearful, but do you think that this is going to succeed and they're going to dismiss this, if not because of the law behind it, just because of the politics?
Well, it's the other case. It's the true threat case that involved the individual who said at a rally, first person I'm going to put in my scope is LBJ. And that was the true threats to the president. So it's the same criminal statute. And I think the issue here is, for those who don't remember, he put out 8647. He just found this on the beach, posted it to Instagram. They delayed the prosecution for about a year. His defense is that he thought the word 86 meant to throw out, not to kill, and that even if it was if it could be interpreted another way, it was the kind of hyperbole that the Vietnam War protester gave when he was at a speech, because it was in public, it was made to the public, it wasn't made directly to the president, so forth. I think for a normal person, that defense might work. The issue is it's James Comey. And James Comey, who has prosecuted people for less in terms of threat prosecutions, it comes off, and he's at the same time bringing a motion to suppress claiming that all the text and communications he had that they found on his phone right before and right after he posted this. I mean, like, why was his wife researching what 86 could mean right before he posted this? I mean, ask yourself that. He was wondering whether he could put it up there and get away with it. And it's also because he's the former FBI director, that it has a very different intonation than it does some normie on the internet. So they compared it to normie charges, people on the internet that say stuff. But by the way, they prosecuted people for less, in my view, incorrectly. But Comey himself was involved in some of those prosecutions. So the problem is his own history of prosecuting people for true threats under a much broader definition, because that goes to his subjective intent, and the fact that he's trying to suppress through a search warrant suppression request the evidence that suggests he did have some awareness as to what this meant and could mean and would be interpreted as. I think normally, I'm for a very limited definition, restrictive definition of true threat, such that I would be fine with a dismissal if it upheld a consistent constitutional standard of true threat. But I've always said that with Comey, I think he knew exactly what he was doing, and he meant a true threat. And apparently there's evidence that he's trying to suppress connected to it.
Refresh again. I want to read this. It's the timeline is 3:12. Patrice Comey texted James Comey a screenshot of a Google search term defining 86. It stated in substance, in U.S. slang, 86 means to get rid of or refuse service. This related to her suggesting that he post the photo. He really did blame his wife. Sorry. I'm just of the opinion generally that you would lie to protect your wife, not throw your wife under the bus. 552. Person one, an acquaintance of Comey, had not heard from in 2 to 3 years, described as hostile and hoping Comey would face consequences for past actions. Texted Patrice criticizing the post. Quotes from filing include, you guys have gone off the deep end over there with your TDS. 8647 is a call for violence no matter how you spin it. I hope you and James go to jail for a long time. Oh my goodness. And he doesn't want this in here. A longer version, I have held my tongue for a long time. 8647 is a call for violence no matter how you spin it. Shortly after Patrice's initial response, she argued back, sending a text with an Amazon ad screenshot for 8647 anti-Trump funny shirt and stating something to the effect, so sorry that you are misunderstanding that some people think Trump is a bad president. This is no call for violence. Yeah, okay. They're idiots. They deserve. No, but whether or not Patrice, his wife, Robert, who he threw under the bus, knew this, James Comey was the head of the FBI. He knows gang talk. He knows slang talk. He knows criminal talk. He knows mob talk. And you're right. He's gonna get off, and not in the good way. He's gonna.
Well, I mean, the more serious charge, they needed to bring it at the time rather than delay it a year, to make the point to people to deter this kind of thing from repeating or reoccurring, even if you knew it would lead to a dismissal in a few months. Waiting a year sort of took the sting out of it, and it then did lead to imitators and copycats in making those threats. Mm-hmm. That clearly made that those copycats and imitators thought 86 meant to take out, not take out permanently, to kill, not just remove from the menu. So I think he's lying about what he intended. He wanted it interpreted this way to see what the reaction would be, and to cause a stir around it, knowing what he was doing. He's a very intelligent man, so he doesn't, and he's very familiar with these kind of terms. Now, speaking of people think Tyler Robinson's not really guilty. Comey claims he's innocent as a deep state target. What he should be prosecuted with the case out of Florida, but I don't think that will happen. But I hope it does. But with Brennan and Clapper and all of their criminal coup operations that continue to be detailed by the Tulsi Gabbard published reports in committee that have been coming out over the last month, just more and more information about the scale and scope to which the FBI under James Comey, and then his removal, was used by his deep state allies to launch another criminal investigation of the president and to sequester away criminal implications and information concerning the Biden family. They would list everything as Russian disinformation to continue and propagate the Russiagate hoax that was instigated and originated by Comey himself. That's what he should be prosecuted for down in Florida, in the Southern District of Florida. But we'll see if they actually bring that conspiracy case they claim that they're going to bring. But the person who really is innocent that is being criminally prosecuted is the young African-American autistic kid who they're trying to pin the January 6th pipe bombings on to such a degree that the CIA officer who was the Capitol Police officer that was implicated by independent investigative research by Steve Baker and folks connected with him. Steve Baker has brought a very robust dismissal motion on the defamation claim brought in that case.
I just want to add a preface to this. There was a comment in our locals community that said, Viva, Brian Cole Jr., Tyler Robinson, be consistent. And I know the person is of good faith, and I just want to highlight there's nothing comparable about these two prosecutions. One, Brian Cole Jr. was arrested 5 years after the events, after he was apparently originally investigated and they didn't pursue it 4 years earlier. He was arrested 5 days or a month, after Steve Baker's expose came out identifying the likely, or in his view, the Jan 6 pipe bomber as a Capitol Police officer. The evidence against Brian Cole Jr. consists of items that he bought over 6 years, common household items, and some paid for by cash, some paid for in credit card. The evidence against Brian Cole Jr., at least, prima facie, is non-existent. The timeline is not comparable. Tyler Robinson was arrested turned himself in after a manhunt of 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever. They're just not comparable. Other than the fact that they are both defendants in a prosecution, they're not comparable. And understanding the distinctions is what will allow you to actually meaningfully assess things. With that said, Shawnee Kirkhoff has sued Steve Baker, Joe Hanneman, Blaze Media, and his other companies, we'll get to legally in a second, for defamation. He filed what I think is an amazing, it's a two-part dismissal for anti-SLAPP, dismissal for, let's say, failure to state a claim for lack of better terminology. And he says, dismiss against my companies because she sued my companies, which didn't publish any of this stuff. They were formed 5 months after, the expose went out. Under Virginia anti-SLAPP law, it seems like a no-brainer that it should get dismissed. And then the only question is going to be whether or not this civil suit, in terms of testing the theories or the evidence that the defendants have, has served its basis for whatever they wanted to use it for as relates to the prosecution of Brian Cole Jr. But a robust argument under the anti-SLAPP, and a robust argument that nothing in it, even according to the, in the four corners of the lawsuit, can possibly satisfy the actual malice threshold, because she was a public figure, whether she liked it or not. She was a Capitol Police officer, was also being talked about for her improper use of less than lethal munitions on the crowd. And that not only was there no actual malice, they tried to substantiate and did in fact substantiate their theory with accepted science. And so I just, but for politics, I don't know how this doesn't get granted. But what's your take on the motion to dismiss? And Virginia, it's West Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia. Sorry, people, don't think I'm stupid. There's some states that I don't understand why you have north, south, and then no center. Okay, Virginia anti-SLAPP law. Like, do you think this passes the test for a dismissal under the anti-SLAPP legislation?
Well, or just under federal rules of civil procedure, which is they have to plausibly allege.
Stop. Refresh it. Now I know it has nothing to do with you talking. Robert, you're going to get mad. Refresh again. And while I do that, I'm going to bring up a couple of super chats. People will. Robert's. Someone said reboot your computer, but I don't even want to ask Robert to reboot. Sparky 6086 says it was obvious both of you worked very hard and during the 1776 law event. Thanks for your efforts. I can tell you one thing. I did not work hard at all in planning that event. I was actually just, I worked hard driving there, bringing the family, and attending it. I had nothing to do with the planning. It was very good. Sparky says, Robert, you may remember me speaking of you at the Chattanooga event about the threat of big grits not using nixtamalization, so they are no longer hominy grits. I disagree with Robert. There was I think Ginger Ninja. Oh, hold on a second. I'm going to go over to let me just get this over here to Rumble. People, sorry about this. We're just going to have to do this throughout the night because I don't want Robert to reboot his entire computer. Ginger Ninja says, part 2, Tyler Robinson absolutely endangered other people when he pulled the trigger. Is ignorance of the danger a defense against the death penalty? And Ginger Ninja says, part 1, you don't take a 140-yard shot with people standing 5 feet away without endangering anyone. Absolutely absurd. Now the law may have not have intended the death penalty for a case like this, but that's it. Let's go here and stop sharing screen. Well, let's go to the chat already. over on Rumble and see what's going on. Well, no, we're going to go to Viva Barnes Law. I don't want to get to the tips. We're going to get to all the tip questions afterwards. The best I can. Yeah, where is Mitch McConnell? Have we seen Mitch McConnell? Have we seen anything about Mitch McConnell? Virus enters my body. The Flintstones vitamin I ate 20 years ago. Okay, I'm not sure what that is. We'll get Barnes in a second, and I'll just go to the Rumble chat and see what's going on there. In any event, I got the. Oh no! You know what? I should have done this. I should have used this opportunity. Hold up. Wait a minute. I'm going to show you the hot sauce. I put the hot sauce right behind us, but the bottling no longer looks the same. Let me go to BiltongUSA.com and show you what Biltong has, and show you where you can go get the Viva Fry hot sauce. Is it on the page actually? Now that I say this, this is Biltong. It's beef jerky and it's delicious, but I'm an idiot and it's not actually in there. Let me bring up the hot sauce stuff in a second. And we'll see if Barnes is not running and hiding. He's not. He'll be there in a second. We got our chat here. Question: how would you address the grievous, demonstrable Gnostic threat to the spiritual, ideological integrity and structural basis of Western civilization? This is a long answer, which I am not sure that we're going to be able to get into right now. A long question that we're not going to be able to get into. Give me 1 second. I want to bring up the hot sauce that I sent myself earlier today. It was called Link for Hot Sauce. Here we go. All right. Now I'm going to bring it up and you're going to see what we've got going on at Biltong. And Barnes is hopefully going to come back. Here, hold on. There we go. We got the Verde. I don't know where it is on the website, but I'm going to give everybody the link right now. Get your Verde. There's the Tennessee Gold, which there's spicy and not spicy. There's going to be two versions of everything. Spicy and not spicy. And everyone should get the spicy hot sauce, but some of you don't like hot sauce to be spicy, so you can go get that. I'm going to give everybody the links in a second. I'll give you all four of them. And until that happens, do I want to talk about what were we talking? We were talking about James. No, hold on. We were not talking about James Comey. We had moved on. People, what were we just talking about before that happened? Let me see what Robert texts me if he's going to reboot his computer. We're talking about James Comey. Oh, for goodness sake, it'll come back in a second. Okay, so I got one piece of advice, which was interrupt and talk for a bit to let his internet catch up. No, I think it was doing it as I was. I'm going to go ahead and blame the deep state. That's always the one to go with. Here, let's show you this one, and then we're going to go back to the show. I'll get to the chat and take some chats. We got Tennessee Gold, and then there's hot and not so hot, and I'll give everybody the link. Check it out and get some for yourself here. Link. I told Anton I want to have so many orders come in that it takes it off the shelf, but I'm not sure if we're going to get there. Oh, the hot sauce is under condiments, says Ginger Ninja. Ginger, thank you. It says hot sauce is on there. It's under condiments, pastes, and sauces. All right, go check it out. Until Barnes gets back in here, I'm so totally senile. Let me go to my my show notes, which are in the backdrop here. Inbox. Got to get Barnes' email, and I'll can't remember which one we were talking about. Tyler Robinson. Okay, hold on. We got the Epstein. Oh no, we're doing the Epstein Act in a second. Intellect. What the heck? Okay, forget it. I'm senile. Let me go to the chat over here on CommieTube. As impressive as the Duran are online, they were 10 times more impressive in person in Chattanooga. If they were there for us, if they were in the U.S. for 2 weeks, they'd run the whole country, in my opinion. What do you two think? The Alexes, it's fun meeting people. This is Alex. You got Alex Christoforou and Alex, I forget, Alexander Christoforou, and the other Alex, I forget his last name. It'll come up in a second. It's really awesome when you meet people and they are actually the same people in real life that they are online. It's not always the case. Sometimes, it's weird, but they are equally charismatic, wonderful people. Like as we had dinner, we hung out. They're absolutely great people, and the same in real life as they are on the internet, personable and everything. It's fantastic. But I think what I'm going to have to do right now is just cover another topic before Barnes gets here. I hear the dogs fighting. Give me 1 second. Let me bring one up here. I was going to bring up. Oh yeah, we could do the. Well, let me just actually see what Barnes is doing. And you coming back? Question mark, smiley face. I'll do one. We'll do a filler in the interim. So we had James Comey, who's making the motion to dismiss his charges. We were talking about the January 6th pipe bomber. So Steve Baker, another thing, Steve Baker came out and in his motion to dismiss cited the anti-SLAPP legislation and accurately summarized what this is, which is this is precisely a lawsuit to deter public participation. And there's a fee shifting provision of the anti-SLAPP statute that if someone files a lawsuit for the purposes of silencing legitimate public discussion, First Amendment protected stuff that deals with matters of public interest, that dismissed and fee shifting provision. In my view, successfully argued all of it. The case is so wild and so flimsy. Everybody should go watch the interview that I did with Steve. I'll give everybody the link right now. I posted the entire thing to X. Steve even didn't potentially even know certain facts which legitimize, as opposed to prove false, his theory of the case, which is that the day before his story dropped, I don't think everybody appreciates this. The day before his story dropped on Shawnee Kirkhoff, who in his expose with his gate analysis, which people say is junk science, but it's not. It's actually relied upon, for a great many things. Before the story dropped, there was a memo that had been circulating internally with the ODNI that they sent up to the CIA. And the day before his story dropped, Shawnee Kirkhoff was getting raided by the FBI, and raided even according to their own admissions in their own defamation lawsuit. And she got raided, and he didn't know at the time that they polygraphed her and that she was told that she was deceptive in the polygraph. And they nonetheless want to claim that what he published was with actual malice, as if it hadn't been thoroughly fleshed out, gone through legal, substantiated in as much as could possibly be substantiated, talking about a matter of public concern, which is Shawnee Kirkhoff's or a potential Capitol Police involvement in the planting of the pipe bombs. She's now working at the CIA, not for nothing. And so, in my view, I think Robert's probably going to agree that in law, the defamation suit should be dismissed. The only question is going to be whether or not politics, in fact, ruins everything. And because of the politics of it, and Steve Baker is a deep state, let's say a thorn in the side of the deep state, politically disfavored, whether or not they're going to say, they've alleged actual malice and we have to take things for granted at this stage of the proceedings. Barnes has, they've picked him up and they've moved him, people. Barnes, I'm going to bring you in. Let's see how this goes. All right.
It's just the computer audio, but it's a different computer, so we'll see how this works.
We'll give it 8 minutes. So anyways, I think I've covered the Steve Baker motion to dismiss it thoroughly. What do you think happens? What's your prediction? What's your take in law?
Well, I think, one notable thing is, as they pointed out in their opposition, the only thing like Megyn Kelly was critical of him on was not notifying her first before the story. But they point out if you believe someone was a suspect in a major crime, the last thing you would do is go knock on their door and say, by the way, I think you're involved in one of the major criminal scandals in the history of America. I mean, it'd be like if you knew somebody was Buffalo Bill, the serial killer next door, would you go knock on the door and say, hey, I think you're a serial killer. I'm about to publish it. What do you think? So that was a very good point. You'd go to the government, which is what they did.
Give me the pipe bombs. Give me the pipe bombs.
Exactly. Hey, pipe bomber, I think you're the pipe bomber involved in a major CIA-connected massive cover-up investigation. What do you think? You better jack up your life insurance before you do that. So I thought very good point there in the motion to dismiss. Claire Locke, remember, is the law firm. I was introduced to this scuzzy, sleazy, bottom-of-the-barrel, gutter-level law firm when they were taking pot shots at me for bringing suit again for the Covington kids cases. And what they lied about, what they failed to disclose, was that they represented some of the potential defendants in those cases. They're a politically corrupt, deep state connected law firm. And their claims are just implausible on their face. To prove actual malice, you have to show subjective awareness of reckless disregard for the truth. Subjective awareness of recklessness. Negligence doesn't count. Breaching journalistic standards doesn't count. And so what they even detailed is that their best evidence against him was, well, there's some gait analysis studies out there that show the limitations of it. He's the one who referenced it and hyperlinked it in his own story. He's the one who footnotes anything that's critical or skeptical that they cite as being a counterbalance. So, given that, they don't have a defamation claim against Steve Baker. They never did. And why are they hiding who's funding it? The way in which, and then now it's come out that in fact she did fail the polygraph test. How is she still at the CIA? Not a coincidence, this law firm is connected to CIA Director Ratcliffe, who's been busy lying and misleading the president into all kinds of foreign policy foolishness. So an honest judge would dismiss the case. You just don't know if you have an honest judge.
Yeah, that's a good point. How's she still at the CIA? Like so by the way, also very important part that I put the highlight out. Steve Baker said the day after his article published, CIA calls him, or someone from liaison calls him and says, "You just got one detail wrong, and it was her job function. She's not meaningfully employed. She's a campus security." He was since told that's false. That she did in fact have a higher position than mere campus security, and that they lied to him on purpose. On the one hand, to create the illusion that he made a mistake in his article, but also to hide what her actual position might have been or potentially was. We'll see. Claire Locke. They represent the CIA, Robert, correct? Elements within, like Claire Locke represents Ratcliffe.
Ratcliffe himself, the CIA director. So so hopefully Steve Baker gets the dismissal that he deserves, and they have to write a check for his lawyers. But I am curious who the third party funders are for Claire Locke, because clearly somebody is. And again, Claire Locke represented Dominion. Claire Locke has deep state ties and allies. They often lie. They lied about they said that you couldn't bring a class action claim, deliberately confusing people with class libel, which is an entirely separate phenomenon. By the way, it was Tucker Carlson that had him on. Tucker has now complained about Claire Locke, but he was the sucker and the schnook who got taken for a ride by Claire Locke in their interview with him. They claimed a very broad extension of the Westfall Act that at that point had not been so adjudicated in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. So they misled people about the law. They're sleazy, scuzzy lawyers who sort of exaggerate claims on a routine and repeated basis for their privileged and protected clients. And the fact that they were the law firm on it was as much a reason to view the case skeptical as any other.
It was Alex Makouris. Thank you very much, Sparky6086. Christophorou, which means the body of Christ, which I never appreciated until we had him on, and Mercouris, which means the Mercury based. I don't know. I just made that up. Okay, so that's what's. Do we have another deep state case there? We got Jan 6. We had Epstein. So okay, Robert, the Epstein stuff is back out there, where you have one judge, Emmett Sullivan. I noticed his name was. So I'm choking on my own tongue here. Judge Emmett Sullivan, who was the persecuting judge in the Michael Flynn case, the one who wouldn't drop the charges even after he was told the charges were being dismissed. This time he's going hard against the administration yet again, basically in disbelief as to how the administration has failed to disclose the Epstein files, the redactions which made no sense, and the remaining documents that have not yet been disclosed, despite what is the legal obligation to do so. There was just a quote in his in his writing. I want to remember what he said exactly. I'll get it in a second, but he was, flabbergasted at how the government how the Trump administration has not turned over the documents and redacted some unnecessarily, and not turned over others that they had the legal obligation to do. What's ultimate ruling here? What is he reordering them or ordering them to comply with what they already had to comply with?
What's fascinating is it's the power of the Epstein Transparency Act, co-authored by Congressman Thomas Massey and Congressman Ro Khanna, continue to show its efficacy. So the Attorney General's office, I had somebody respond to me on something, I forget what it was, but they were saying, "Oh, hey Barnes, when are you going to admit that there's nothing in the Epstein files?" "Oh, wait, like blue collar legal scholar called himself or something." And I was like, "Dude, they still haven't released all the Epstein files. He apparently was unaware of this. The Mr. Legal Scholar. The about 2.5 million files still withheld, and the question was who could get legal remedy. So a journalist sued on the grounds that, look, I have an informational right that was the entire right that was being protected and preserved by the statute itself. And second, I have a financial interest and I'm suffering financial injury because as long as it's not released, I don't get the economic advertising dollars I would if I was able to go into detail on these unreleased redacted files.
The journalist is Katie Fang. She's independent. She's the one who made this request. I just wanted it was the quote from the judge where he says, Emmett Sullivan, take it for what it's worth. He's a partisan hack, so he's now jumping on the opportunity to rail against the administration, the Trump administration that he hates. He says, roughly verbatim, the public has the right to know what the hell is going on here, and the counsel for the Trump administration had no good answer for why they hadn't fully complied.
Exactly. And the first one was, does she have standing? The court recognized she did, because that was the point. Informational injury and financial injury, both. But informational injury itself would be independently sufficient, which means anybody out there can actually challenge and sue the Attorney General for noncompliance under the interpretation the judge gave it. So that makes this law very powerful. So people that are out there that have an interest in the Epstein file should keep that in mind for things that are still missing from it based on this precedent that's been set. Now, the issues are that they redacted the names of those involved with of the emails sharing a self-described torture video, that they redacted the co-conspirator names from that were in the draft indictments. All people they never indicted for reasons that have yet to be explained. They redacted details of where Trump had been accused. They withheld all materials that were in a language other than English. Didn't disclose any foreign language records.
Hold on, pause you there. Did they disclose the foreign language? What was the foreign language?
No, they didn't even disclose that. They said if it's in foreign language, we're not showing it to you. And then they wouldn't even show their redaction logs to show what they had redacted and why and how. They just redacted or withheld. So the court said that's all illegal. That's all in violation of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The way past the timeline and deadline, and the Attorney General offered no excuses for any of it. Just pretended he couldn't be sued, Todd Blanche Dubois. And so the federal judge issued an injunction, which means a whole lot of Epstein files are going to come out one way or another. And so, some of us said at the time, it's what Vice President Vance has reported as saying all the way back in the spring of 2025, when this first arose in a Situation Room conversation that has now been published by the book Regime Change, where he said, look, it doesn't matter who gets implicated. This is all going to come out sooner or later. Get ahead of it now. Don't try to hide it. That will only make it worse. Trump didn't listen to Vice President Vance's advice, just like he didn't listen to him about going into Iran. And consequently, he'll continue to bleed out politically on this, because now it's going to keep coming out, and now it's been ordered out by a federal court. In the same vein, we had another case at the Southern District of New York concerning Ghislaine Maxwell's sealed files, including grand jury sealed files, that, thanks to the good work of Congressman Massey, this judge, I know the judge, he's dumb as a doorknob, but at least he got this right. Basically admitting that the Epstein Files Transparency Act supersedes Rule 6E in the grand jury rules, so that is no longer a basis. Grand jury rules are no longer a basis to withhold any documents connected to Epstein, and that those documents are also going to be disclosed and made publicly available. So we're going to start getting a lot more Epstein files over the next 6 months, thanks to these conscientious litigants and the exceptional legislation crafted by Thomas Massey that I think will be a precedent for future legislation, whether it's Kennedy files that were supposed to have been released a long time ago, Robert Kennedy murder assassination files, Martin Luther King assassination files, that Tulsi Gabbard was trying to get as much out as she could before she was, in my opinion, pushed out of her job as Director of National Intelligence, that use the Massey legislation as the way to pass these laws in the future, because now they're judicially enforceable as well based on these precedents.
I'm just fact checking in real time, Robert. Justice Department said it withheld some Epstein-related documents written in foreign languages, but do not specify which languages. I'm not saying it's Hebrew, and I'm not.
It's Hebrew. It's Hebrew. We got it. It's Hebrew. It's Hebrew. It's Arabic. It's French. It's Italian. It's
no. I don't.
Swedish,
if I had to,
probably some Nordic.
I don't know what that Norwegian. There's probably all of that in there because remember the royal families of Europe are all deeply embedded with him. The royals of the Gulf Coast or of the Coast countries are all embedded with Epstein, and of course a lot of people in the Israel lobby. It's like whenever Bibi Netanyahu is up to something nasty and mean, he says it in Hebrew, not in English. So it wouldn't surprise me if Hebrews wanted. Put it this way: the fact they didn't tell you which foreign language it is tells you there's something embarrassing about the foreign language that's being used.
Look, and I know people are going to say you're on the anti-Israel bug. I mean, I think if it were Russian, they would certainly keep it quiet.
Oh no, if it was Russian, they're Chinese. They would be talking about it.
No, I don't. If it were Russian, they would.
See, these people are connected to Epstein. These dangerous threats to America. Same with it was just Arabic. If it was I think they disclose it. It's got to be a language that they're uncomfortable that will implicate someone specifically, and even French doesn't necessarily because French is multiple countries. The Italian multiple countries. Portuguese multiple countries. Spanish all over the world. So what language, Arabic is a big part of the world. What language is it that would look bad? I mean, if it was Farsi, they would have disclosed it because it would have implicated the Iranians and the Persians. Mm-hmm. But there's very few languages that are limited to only one country in the world. And that language is Hebrew.
Robert, it might I'm just trying to think. This is the first time that it's come out that foreign language documents had not been disclosed, right? Because I didn't know this before tonight's show.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason there was no foreign language exception, no Hebrew exception in the Epstein Files Transparency Act.
I'm still going to say it's Russian. It might be Arabic. It's hard to translate Arabic, Robert. If it were Russian, it might show a tie. I don't know, but between the admin, who knows? All right. Well, we should be getting some interesting stuff in the coming days, weeks, and months, unless there's some. Oh my God! You know what's going to happen, Robert? It's going to be like right in time for November as well. And if there's something bad in there, just the optimal time for something bad. Okay, what do we move on?
We've got the 1776 Law Center suit, the Babylon Bee, Texas election law restored, federal court limits the detention ability to detain illegals, Idaho abortion law, the Second Amendment case challenging Denver's ban on open carry or concealed carry for anybody who's a traveler through their state, intellectual diversity upheld under the First Amendment challenge, a couple of Trump cases, the ballroom case, the DOJ Harvard case, and the trade court case. So
well, let's go with the topic everybody loves discussing, abortion, Robert. So the Idaho passed a law which was a virtual near ban on abortion, with the exception for life-saving abortions. And this is always a topic. It's almost a topic as polarizing as Israel, where you understand the arguments on both sides, and people are going to have to agree on that somewhere window in the middle. But understanding that people say there's no such thing as a life-saving abortion, Idaho passed basically a total abortion ban, save and except for saving the woman's life. It was declared unconstitutional, and this is where you're going to get into a gray zone that some people are not going to agree on, in that it didn't include, it did not consider mental health of the woman in terms of giving birth to the child. And it seems that they've declared it unconstitutional because it doesn't allow for a window when it relates to what they call the broader risks to the woman's health, which even as I read, what the ruling says, and you can sort of understand, they go from life-saving to if the woman is going to harm herself, if not given the abortion, then they deem that to be the harm to the woman caveat that they need to have so that this law can be constitutional. And all that I can envision when hearing this is you're going to have a bunch of women saying, if I don't get the abortion, I'm going to kill myself, and therefore I fit into this exception, which is basically going to become the new rule. I'm not sure the time frames on which that exception can be availed, but bottom line, for the time being, they've declared it unconstitutional because it doesn't allow for that caveat, that being a woman's mental health.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. There's parts of the decision that make sense. There's part of the decision that I think reaches. And so the Idaho banned abortion aside from saving the life of the mother, and the interpretation, and what the judge admitted is that there's a recognized right in the legal history for that, but she wanted to extend it to the health of the mother, and then extend the health of the mother
to be the mental health of the mother, and then extend the mental health of the mother that if you don't give someone an abortion, they might harm themselves, and that thus becomes an excuse for an abortion. I think that part is not gonna be upheld on appeal. I think part of it is. Now, what's interesting is the same courts that said you had no bodily right to refuse a mandatory vaccine are the same courts saying you do have a constitutionally protected right to take another life for your own health, including your own mental health. Tells you what these courts are really motivated by. I agree with some of now there was a constitutional amendment she should have cited that the judge did not. She talked about the right to self-protection being one part of the substantive liberty protected under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution against the states. And that included the right to be free from egregious intrusions into one's body. Where is that court? Where is that court? And where have all the other courts been when it came to the vaccine mandate? I agree that is such a right, but I would root it in another amendment, which this judge, being a liberal Democratic judge, didn't want to admit, is the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is a right of self-defense. I think that's where you have a right of self-protection against intrusion or incursion by the state or sponsored by the state. So putting that aside, I think the part that she says that you could extend death to great bodily harm makes sense if you apply a Second Amendment self-defense standard. And what I've argued for some years with my pro-life friends is that if an abortion is necessary to protect your against substantial or great bodily harm, well, we recognize the right to kill anybody in that circumstance, to be blunt about it. Words, even if that person did nothing wrong to you, you have, let's say someone loses control of their car, not for any volitional reason of their own accord, and is heading right to you, and the only way you could stop him is to shoot him in the head, otherwise you're dead, or someone close to you is dead. You have a right to do so under self-defense principles. So the self-defense principles, which this judge didn't want to cite because they don't like the Second Amendment, shows you the political motivation, how they're interpreting these rights and how hypocritical they are, would have provided a better defense. But what it would not have extended to is saying, well, if I don't cause harm in this direct way to this person, then, and under Idaho law, the unborn fetus is seen as a human person, then I might get mentally distressed and hurt myself, so I get to shoot you in the head. If I don't shoot you in the head, I'm going to get distressed and hurt myself. That's complete garbage. That's why disanchoring it from self-defense principles leads to the kind of kooky nonsense that this judge ended up saying.
But what I was trying to look for, and I don't think there is a time frame. It was a condition-based exception and not a time-based exception. There wasn't any limitation even on the mental health aspect. Did I misunderstand that?
Correct. I mean, basically, all you got to do is go into a doctor, say, "Hey, doc, I'm going to hurt myself unless you kill this other person," and because the person's inside my body, have at it, kill this other person. That's what the judge said was just fine.
Yeah, but
it's a constitutional right to kill another person if it would affect your mental health. I mean, this is kooky.
No, I'm trying to find the video, and I forget who it was. The chat's going to know, but it was an Asian woman, and she was being examined, or she was being asked questions on the legislation that they were proposing, and they asked her, like, does the health of the woman include mental health? And then basically, is up until what point? I think I might be misremembering the statement, but up until what point do you get to say for the mental health? And is it?
Well, that's where you apply self-defense principles. For your mental health, can you kill somebody? No. It has to be bodily harm, substantial risk of bodily harm. Say, my abusive partner was gaslighting me all the time. Wasn't causing me any risk to my body, but was gaslighting me all the time, and I was going crazy. So I decided to shoot him in the head. No, that's not self-defense. So that's why if you anchor this in self-defense principles, which is what all of the state laws were actually rooted in, that's why it said to prevent the death of the mother, you could have an abortion back in the 1800s, early 1800s, in order to say this is a substantially rooted, deep-rooted constitutional liberty. It's a self-protection, self-defense remedy. That's what that law represents. This judge didn't want to admit that, because to admit that would be to credit it to the Second Amendment, not the Fifth Amendment or the 14th Amendment, but the Second Amendment through the 14th Amendment, which the liberal judges don't want to recognize. And they don't want the Second Amendment to be a broad right of self-defense. And it would limit the ability to jump over and say, just go in and say, my mental health requires me to kill the baby. Right. And so I think that part of the decision was not well rooted in the law and is likely to be overturned. The part of the decision that says health includes life, so great bodily harm is likely to be upheld because, again, that's the self-defense principle in which all these laws are recognized, where they stem from. That's what they said. They said you could do an abortion as a doctor or a medical provider or anyone else in order to save the life of the mother because that's a self-defense principle. And if you extend that, great bodily harm is generally included within the self-defense principle. Your mental health is not.
Is there not? I mean, at some point, because it's funny, you had Dobbs being overturning. Oh, geez, how am I blanking out on what did Dobbs overturn, Robert?
Somebody recommends in the chat we should give the fetus the right of self-defense with a firearm in case the doc comes coming.
Robert, Dobbs overturned Roe v. Wade. My goodness.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So,
and said there was no constitutional right to an abortion, period. And so how is she now saying there is a constitutional right to abortion?
Well, but also
she's trying to say a constitutional right to abortion in case of health, and that includes mental health. That's how the mental health is the big leap. Physical health, not so much.
They sent it back to the states, and that was the whole victory of Dobbs. It says, okay, it's not a federal issue; it's a state issue. Now you got all these states enacting different abortion laws. Is there not, and why is there not a constitutional solution to this, which is simply to recognize constitutional rights to a fetus after a certain point in time, where you say, as of, medically, scientifically speaking, whatever it is, second trimester, it has benefits from constitutional rights under the Constitution. Now the states, you can go do whatever you want within that framework. Why can't they do that?
Because they don't want to go there. They chose not to recognize or even address the personhood. They've decided now. The argument in their favor is that the courts are ill-equipped to make that decision. To me, they have to make that decision. But that's where they've gone. That they've said when life begins is not a question for the courts to decide. It's a question for legislatures to decide.
That's a load of garbage. I mean, first of all, it's a question of science, where at least you can agree that viability would be where you afford constitutional protections. And if they say but then it still doesn't make sense, Robert, because if a pregnant woman gets punched in the belly in California and the baby dies, you can get charged for murder. So they recognize constitutional rights to a fetus after a certain.
In Massachusetts, I think it's all the way up until birth now. You can give an abortion. They just passed that law. Right, Democrats are doing a poor job of saying they're not extreme on this topic.
It's the celebration parallax. It's not happening, but it's a good thing that it is.
Speaking of the Second Amendment, the NRA finally got off its rear, because usually it's the Gun Owners of America and other associations bringing a lot of these good challenges. But they brought suit against the city of Denver, who prohibits completely. If you're not a resident of Colorado, you cannot even apply for a concealed carry permit, and you can't open carry either. In other words, you can't be armed traveling through there. So you're a trucker who might be armed in order to protect yourself against all kinds of hijackings and other things that can happen out on the open road. You're committing a crime if you go through the city of Denver, and so they brought suit challenging it under the Second Amendment.
Let me bring this one up here because it's a funny joke. Obviously, the language redacted from the Epstein files was Esperanto. Fun fact, George Soros was required to only speak Esperanto in his parents' household when he grew up. I don't think that's the language which is sort of Spanish in Yiddish. One of them was Yiddish in Spanish or Spanish in Yiddish. I'm going to double check what that is. Robert, sorry. So field this one for me because I'm not familiar with this case.
So what they did a good job of documenting is that historically, state laws, all the way back to our founding, exempted, like even when they limited or required permits for carrying under certain circumstances or conditions, they always exempted travelers because they recognized travelers have a need to be able to defend and protect themselves, and excluded them from any laws requiring that they apply for a permit or anything like that. So their point is that means it's part of the Second Amendment protections. The right to defend yourself as a traveler traveling through different cities, counties, and states than your own home often enhances the need, because you're not at home, to know how to be able to defend yourself with these rights. And so these limits and these bans on being even able to apply for a permit in Colorado is a violation of the Second Amendment. And I agree with it. It is. and they have reciprocal provisions with some states, but not all states. And so that doesn't provide a satisfactory substitute. So they got some good plaintiffs, brought a good, robust claim. Hopefully it will extend and expand the Second Amendment right to travelers in ways that will moot the necessity of Thomas Massey's reciprocal law, which is to make it mandatory federal law that that you have to respect another state's concealed carry permit. That he's trying to establish that into law, so there's no doubts about it. But this would provide it would constitutionally anchor it, and that would be even stronger protection. So good case and should win.
Well, speaking of potential interstate violation of the Second Amendment, let's get to your case, Robert, which is involving the 1776 Law Center and California cap and invest energy policy, which you're arguing via a plaintiff who's going to show that he's suffering actual harm as a result of this policy, that California's cap and invest. You'll explain to me if I've understood this. I think it's sort of like cap and trade. We had the same thing where they would sell carbon credits and charge you for carbon credits, if depending on what your business was. That anybody who wanted to import energy into California, if it was done in an environmentally harmful manner, would basically have to pay certain carbon taxes for that which was for their emissions. And they would, if it's being imported into California, they'd have to pay a certain amount so that it would be invested into green energies in the state of California. And the result is that basically it's jacking up the prices of all energy in the state of California and deterring or impeding on interstate commerce coming from other states. And therefore that it's on the one hand prejudicing the citizens of California, but also violating interstate commerce and certain constitutional provisions. If that's a sufficiently accurate summary, when I read these things and you talk about things that deal with infrastructure as opposed to like just interstate trade, I don't know. My inkling is to say it's not the same thing as banning or imposing a tax on. I think they did the same thing on pork or meat products coming in from out of state, because that's sort of like much more fungible. You can envision it's just sort of cross-border trade versus electricity or other things which are much more infrastructure based. But I guess at some point they're sort of quite analogous in any event. And so you have a client who's saying, I'm suffering prejudice as a result of this because all it does is jack up all of the energy prices. It favors California businesses to the detriment of out-of-state businesses, which is itself also a violation of interstate commerce, the constitutionality of interstate commerce. And 1776 Law Center, for and on behalf of, I forget who your client is challenging. I don't know how you're going to challenge all of the regulations that impose the cap and invest, but you're sort of embarking on a very uphill battle, I would say.
Oh, sure. What's fascinating is so there's a documentary a couple of years ago, Michael Moore actually did, showing how much of the climate change organizations and the Connect are basically a scam and a scheme, so that their real goal is to promote an ulterior agenda that has nothing to do with improving the environment. California has effectively done the same. What they've done is under the guise and in the name of improving the environment, they have set up a bunch of politically favored and politically connected industries that profit from these laws disguised as environmental laws. And so what it does is, if you're part of an industry that's not native to California, in other words, because they've shut down mostly their oil industry, but if you're part of the oil industry outside of California, coal industry outside of California, then you get discriminated against in favor of the various California-based environmental industries. Sometimes that's natural gas, sometimes that's various green energy. But a lot of this it's not a consistent application across environmental principles. It's instead a consistent application for what favors California businesses that are paying off California politicians to, in the name of climate change, increase the cost on ordinary businesses and homeowners in California, and in order to discriminate against their electricity competitors outside of the state. That's how it really functions. And so California's got away with this because there's been broad sort of discretion given to them under the guise that these were environmental laws. But down deep, they're not really. What they're really designed for is to favor this political patronage and select industry and to enrich the political donor class to the California politicians disguised as environmental improvement when they don't even have evidence that it improves the environment. In some cases, some of the energy that they're promoting is by their own admission makes the environment weaker than the competitors that could be made available to them. So under that theory, then they would violate the Dormant Commerce Clause because it's discriminating against out-of-state enterprise deliberately in favor of in-state enterprise without a consistent rationale for doing so. But yeah, is it uphill? Of course, challenging any of these laws in California is uphill. But I had a client that was willing to give it a shot, and so we're giving it a shot at 1776 Law Center. We'll have the case and other details connected to the case posted at 1776lawcenter.com.
So the Dormant Commerce Clause is a legal rule. It states that it says states cannot pass laws that hurt or treat out-of-state trade worse than in-state trade. Courts created this rule from the U.S. Constitution's power. Yada, yada, yada. It stops states from protecting their own local businesses by blocking fair trade. I mean, I guess I know that you haven't done this without finding something that you can argue from a precedent. What is the closest historical judicial precedent that you have to rely on?
Oh, so there's been a bunch. So whenever usually it's done in the taxing context. So California's been caught doing this repeatedly in the taxing context, where they'll tax out-of-state businesses in a way they don't tax similarly situated in-state businesses. And those taxes have been struck down repeatedly. So that's the most analogous California-driven context for this. I think what most people thought when they first looked at these laws, because we had a client saying we wanted to take a look at this, was there a constitutional problem with this burden that was being imposed on homeowners and small businesses in California? And when I researched it, I first thought it would be tough to challenge, but then when I saw what was really happening was this discriminatory favoritism disguised as environmental legislation. Then I realized, well, that's what the Dormant Commerce Clause is there for. Say, no, you can't do this. You can't prop up your political patrons at the expense of out-of-state industry for that purpose. They're going to claim everything's environmental, rooted, but the problem is their own internal evidence contradicts that. So that there's industries that they're favoring within California that are dirtier than the industries they're excluding and punishing and financially penalizing from outside California.
Well, I say it's good luck, Robert. We'll see if your client even has standing if and when you get there.
Well, the nice thing there is he suffers directly in his business and his individual enterprise. So he fits the definition, particularly that the Supreme Court kind of helped green light this. Remember when they said gas stations could challenge certain California rules because they were indirectly impacted financially. And that if you're in here, he's paying higher energy costs because of these rules. He's paying more money to run his businesses and to operate it and to live in his home because of these rules. So he's directly financially impacted by them in ways that even the gas stations weren't. He's more directly impacted than the gas stations were.
Well, we'll see where it goes, Robert. I shared it. Well, good luck, Godspeed. Let's go from good cases to bad cases, I guess. Not much of a segue, but the administration's lawsuit against Harvard for discriminating against Jewish students. They were seeking declaratory judgment, declaratory relief to the effect that Harvard didn't do enough to protect its students from harassment in the wake of October 7 and the protests and the campus occupations, et cetera, was tossed. And it was tossed because on the one hand, they basically said, we're not giving you a declaratory judgment for that which you've alleged only happened last year and the year before, and there's no ongoing issue in any event. And you didn't sufficiently flesh out what the specific harms were other than broad allegations and, tossed. I think it was a silly lawsuit to have brought in the first place for a number of reasons, legally and from a PR perspective. Not that what happened wasn't a nuisance or an annoyance on various campuses, but for the feds to go after Harvard in this particular case, although Claudine Gay, who comes out and basically says we're not defining what harassment is, even if you call for genocide, they sort of brought it on themselves. But the bottom line, the administration's lawsuit for discrimination against Jewish students at Harvard, tossed. Predictable. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's what we said at the time. It said that this was not a useful application of the Civil Rights Division's limited resources under Harmeet Dillon at the Department of Justice. There's a bunch of cases of people who were discriminated against for religious reasons related to the vaccine mandates imposed by employers that are under her jurisdiction, the Civil Rights Division with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, that she's failed to investigate or bring or pursue, even though she is not as constrained by the statute of limitations as individuals are in trying to enforce those rights and remedies. That's just one of the places where she could be very productive. In the case, like the case I have against IBM and Red Hat, on behalf of an employee discriminated against because he was the wrong race, wrong gender, wrong religion, wrong age, all of it. That's the kind of case they should be involved in. And there's a lot of cases like that where there's been open, overt discrimination based on you being white, based on you being Asian, based on you being male, based on you being Christian, all the rest that the Justice Department's not pursuing because they're too busy worrying about Israeli students or Israel-connected students, or Jewish students. But it's limited because people keep forgetting. The majority of Jewish Americans oppose and have an unfavorable opinion of Bibi Netanyahu. Majority of Jewish Americans oppose the Iranian war. Majority of Jewish Americans oppose what Israel has done in Gaza. So people that keep conflating this with Jews are wrong. So it's the pro-Israel crowd that was offended by the protest that took place at Harvard. But as the judge pointed out, it's no longer even continuous for you to have a right to injunctive relief in the first place.
Yeah, they said it was injunctive declaratory. They were saying all of the allegations were episodic, dealt primarily with 2023, 2024, that they were too parsed out in any event to be systematic. And not for nothing. Like, I don't know. I want to fact check whether or not what you said about the majority of Americans or Jewish Americans being against the various wars. There were certainly Jewish organizations protesting for and on behalf of Gaza at these very occupations.
Yes,
so
exactly. I mean, a lot of them are Jewish students. I mean, the Ivy League doesn't lack for Jewish students. And if you know a lot of the organizations there that are on the left, like Norman Finkelstein, like Noam Chomsky, like a range of other prominent Jewish left intellectuals, they're very anti-Zionist. I mean, Max Blumenthal is Jewish. He's one of the leading opponents of the way Israel has behaved. So many of the leading opponents of Israel are Jewish people, Jewish Americans, Jewish people from around the world. So the constant, continuous effort to conflate the two was also a mistake in the suit. And it's just a waste of resources. And they're trying, as Glenn Greenwald, also Jewish, by the way, has further detailed, the Trump Civil Rights Division has been trying to impose speech codes and diversity, equity, inclusion codes in the name of Jewish representation and Jewish interest and Israeli interest on these campuses in ways that limits the definition of being Jewish to being pro-Israel, because they're unwilling to be sympathetic to the Jewish critics of the nation of Israel or its particular policies now. I wrote an article about Israel as a political pariah in America up on a Substack. People can look it up there and see all the data. It goes back to 1946 and where it's going. But Jewish Americans are not excluded or exempt from that group. The most pro-Israel group in America aren't Jewish at all. They're white evangelical Protestants over the age of 50. And even that group is starting to have and harbor its doubts. But speaking of diversity on campus, one form of diversity that is useful, that is constitutional, according to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, is intellectual diversity on state universities.
You're going to have to field this one, but hold on a second. Before you get there, I want to bring up some Rumble rants. Ginger Ninja's in the house and says they don't want to go there because scientifically it is an individual, distinct human life at the moment of conception. Ginger Ninja says the most pure case of legislation from the bench ever seen: abolish human abortion to the glory of God. And then Ginger Ninja says, I'm sold, Paul. It was Dutch, in Dutch. And that's with respect to the...
that's my Epstein files.
All right, so yeah.
By the way, Ginger Ninja, who was at the 1776 Law Center conference, is actually Ginger. He's an actual Ginger. So
and he's not a ninja, but he is actually
Ginger, though. That's why I wasn't sure if he had trained ninja skills or not.
Well, with the firearm, he's a ninja.
Yes. Oh, yes. With a firearm, yes. So the Indiana passed a law saying they wanted their state universities, state-funded universities, to promote intellectual diversity. And a bunch of professors sued, saying that this is an imposition on us. And the Seventh Circuit ultimately determined that they didn't have standing to sue. I wouldn't have characterized it that way because I don't believe in standing. Really, they hadn't been injured yet, so they didn't have a cause of action. That's how I would have characterized it, rather than conflating constitutional standing doctrine, which isn't constitutional at all, with whether or not you pled the elements of a cause of action, which has been a long bastardization of the principle of standing and how it's been usurped and applied by the courts over the last century. Because none of these professors had been, they claimed that they were going to chill their speech because of these, that they would teach things they normally wouldn't teach. They would reference books they normally wouldn't reference because of this law encouraging intellectual diversity in not only amongst the faculty, but in what the faculty communicate to their students. And they said, but none of you have been punished for any of this. And so like there's no evidence that it's actually consequential or that you have a cause of action really yet. Now, what Judge Easterbrook, who's very smart, but also an unconscionable prick, so, put those two things together. But what he wrote in his concurrence is that there's no First Amendment violation because these are state universities. And this is to some degree state speech. And that as a state university, they can control what their agents teach. And if they want to require certain things in a curriculum, they can do so. Without that, it's not the faculty that run the university, it's the university that run the faculty. And his interpretation is that for state universities, there wouldn't be a First Amendment violation anyway. So we'll see how these intellectual diversity laws work going forward. But the goal was to have universities be less about indoctrination and more about education.
Robert, how many cases do we have left? I know we got the ballroom. We've got
we got the Trump trio of cases and a couple of election cases, and then the Babylon Bee case.
Well, so let's do the Babylon. We'll do a couple more here, then we're going to take it over to the vivabarneslaw.locals.com after party. I'm going to give everybody the link to Locals because there's no paywall. We're using StreamYard, so everybody with a Rumble account can come because I don't know how to end it for only Rumble Premium when using StreamYard. And I'll give everybody the link there in a second. What I was going to say is this. I forget. Oh, so we'll do the Babylon Bee. What state is this one in again, Robert? It's
New Mexico.
New Mexico. New Mexico passed a California-type law which doesn't seek to restrict or prevent AI-generated parody, comedy, etc. Just create the positive obligation to affirmatively indicate when something is AI-generated parody or comedy, which in today's day and age, I can sort of understand why, it might be judicious to create an obligation so that people don't pass off an AI-generated video of a nuclear bomb going off to say the world's coming to an end because it can cause panic, etc., or AI-generated fake videos of people pretending to be other, fake videos intending to mislead. This was seeking to compel, or it is seeking to compel, under the guise of parody, clear identification that something is parody. Or AI-generated parody with a clear indication. The one thing that I didn't understand is the exemption that they provided, which it would create this obligation for, basically, it carved out an exception for regular media, so that this obligation to water stamp and watermark everything as AI really only fell on the, let's say, politically disfavored or alternative media, and it would affect the Babylon Bee, but it wouldn't affect, I don't know if New York Times, when they would do such a thing. So Babylon Bee has now filed suit, claiming this is this compelled speech is a violation of the First Amendment. The exception doesn't make any sense, and I guess as far as the constitutional justification, there is no rational justification for this as a broad measure, let alone for the exceptions that create disparate treatment among entities that are favored and disfavored. I mean, what do you make the necessity of it in general, where sometimes parody is indistinguishable from reality, and if people see AI stuff, they might believe it's real. The judiciousness of the policy in general versus what seems to be an arbitrary or politically favored carve out of an exception under the proposed legislation.
Yeah, I think they've got a good claim, and I think they'll likely prevail because there's ways to regulate this other than the ways New Mexico has done. And that to a degree, if you can show that people would not interpret it as parody or satire, and it's false, and it libels somebody, they can bring a libel claim. There's already available legal remedies for that, which is what they purport to be trying to govern in this case with full disclosure. And that's where I think that any effort to restrain speech, when you already got available remedies, should be looked at skeptically. And that this one, I think, the courts will look at skeptically, and I think Babylon Bee will succeed.
And you think if they hadn't carved out the exception and they just make it as a blanket rule, I appreciate the argument. If it's going to be misleading, if it's going to depict someone in a bad light, you have defamation. But if it's just humorous and people believe it to be true, even though it's not prejudicial, I'm not sure what recourse you would have for that type of stuff. But had they not carved out the exception, which seems to create like a two-tier system, would it have had a better chance of, or do you think it would have it would have been better to do that way?
Yeah, agreed.
But I think as a whole, this is not the best effective way to deal with AI. There are other ways to deal with it within the existing legal frameworks that can satisfy any problems without
guess
trying to
actually-
create.
Well, now that I say it out loud, if someone makes an AI video that causes panic, I mean, that's the same thing as screaming fire in a theater
Right.
that is not currently under fire. And so there's already
There's-
laws.
Yeah, there's available laws for almost all of that. So under the guise that they're regulating AI, I think they just want to restrict speech. That's usually what's going on.
But and I remember when Newsom proposed it in California, we were saying this is just a way to prevent ridicule.
Yes,
But okay.
and I think that's what was going on in New Mexico too. But speaking of ridicule, we've got some judges who ridiculed some of the Justice Department's positions, and we'll see and ridiculed one another about their interpretation of the Justice Department's positions on the voting records. We have a Texas election law that was finally going to be enforced, and in the Fifth Circuit detailed just how nuts the district courts in Texas have been trying to invalidate these laws, principally the district courts coming out of Austin and San Antonio. And then we got federal court limiting detention of illegals in a statutory interpretation that makes no sense to me, but might go up the SCOTUS. Trade court approved a Trump tariff. And then Trump seeks a stay so that he can finish building his ballroom. The five cases we have left.
Let's do the 2 Trump cases here. We'll save the other 3 for over on locals. We'll get to all the locals chat. I'm going to make sure that I didn't miss any tips, questions, or rumble rants. The easy one. So we'll get to the Trump is asking for a stay of the construction of the ballroom, petitioning to the Supreme Court. I'll ask you for the procedural rules after this, but bottom line, there was an injunction an injunction issuing a stay for the construction of the ballroom. They said you didn't get the requisite congressional approval to do it. And now he's petitioning the Supreme Court to allow him to continue with the construction on the basis that it's already underway. I don't know, the balance of inconvenience it weighs in favor of finishing the construction and not leaving this as an open air construction site for however long. I mean, prediction on the one hand, but what's the procedure? When does the Supreme Court, when would they pick this up as a case in any event to hear it? Is there like an emergency docket over the summer?
Yeah, this is called the shadow docket. So it's an emergency motion to stay the stay so that he can finish building the ballroom while a petition for cert is pending. And he might win on it. We'll see. Our first argument is this so upset him, he was like posting on Truth about it. So like one of those, he has these giant long Truth posts sometimes. It's like, holy moly. It just goes on and on. But their argument is that the person complaining doesn't have standing to sue, and that the Trust Preservation Organization also didn't have standing to sue. Claims that it's an excessive use of the ultra-virus principle that was supposed to be very restricted in how it imposes. That was when you're acting outside of authority. Courts don't want that to be a green light to just sue the executive branch whenever you want. And that the balance of equities favors him because he really highlighted the security aspect. That how much of this ballroom isn't the new fancy design. It's all about safety, security, building like bomb-resistant bunkers, building, having a drone-resistant port, having snipers up top, having glass that apparently not only is bulletproof, but is like bomb-proof somehow. So it's all about, they highlighted the security aspects of his ballroom building as an argument for why the balance of equities favors letting him complete it rather than leave him vulnerable. They highlighted the various assassination attempts, even though, buying in that the Israeli Mossad fake intel that Iran was just about to whack him when he was on the airport, and the Turks that led him to hide out in a catering truck that has now become a satirical meme all around the world. They have the catering truck saying Iran must surrender now, and the catering truck saying fight, fight, fight. The little catering thing that rolls up and down the middle of the hallways and the alleyways and whatever.
Just say Trump took flack. People were saying, so you just left the plane and you left all your White House staff and journalists on there. It's like, you guys knew what you signed up for when you signed up to be, press corps. Trump is not going down with you, nor is he going to?
Apparently not. He's like, press secretary, you stay behind. She resigned, of course, this week. Maybe after this news. Do we know? All you media people, Rubio, you stay on that one. I'll be right back.
All I say, I don't fault the president for this. His obligation is not to expose himself to risk, to save face, or to reduce the risk of his staff. But set that aside. Caroline Leavitt, do we know why she resigned?
No, we
family issues?
her public explanation is she has 2 kids that are recently born. There was some suggestion that being the world learning that I mean none of what the Secret Service did made no sense. It means key people in the Secret Service are in the bed of Mossad, because that isn't how you would protect the president under that circumstance. First of all, you wouldn't let any plane go off, leave. Second, you would secure the perimeter. Well, of course, first, by the way, you would vet the intel. The CIA said this was garbage from the day one. Why are you letting Mossad dictate to you what is legitimate intel when they're the biggest fake intel organization in the world in terms of lying to the U.S.? Just lied us into an Iran war based on all fake intel all over the place. And now you're buying that fake intel that the president's life is at risk. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is you would secure the perimeter. You wouldn't have the plane. You wouldn't have any plane take off. There was no explanation of this that would look good for Trump, because it looks like either with the one, it kind of makes him look like a coward hiding out in the catering truck that's going to create memes from now into eternity. But it also is like he would abandon everybody, including his Secretary of State, to be sitting ducks on the actual plane, have that plane take off. So but none of it makes sense within traditional security protocol. Larry Johnson, who used to give teaching on this when he was in the government, that doesn't make any sense. So all it was really done, it was just to terrorize the president in this constant state of fear that makes him dependent on Israeli intelligence and fearful and thus angry at the Iranians. I mean, they're just, the Mossad is just manipulating Trump with such ease. He looks pitiful. He looks sad. Fight from the catering truck. This is not the same Trump as Butler 2024.
Hold on. Were we on the ballroom? We were on the ballroom.
Yeah, that was the ballroom.
Okay, so hold on. But so bottom line, it's the shadow docket. When do we expect to?
I think they've scheduled the opponent to brief. I think we'll get a decision within a week or 10 days.
Oh, okay, I was going to say maybe they're just going to say this is not enough of an emergency for us to deal with over the summer. But okay, well, so that's one. Trump trying to I also think it's ridiculous. There's a security issue to the ballroom, even if they're building something of a bunker in the basement. I would expect that.
I just don't know why he didn't get full. Well, why not just get in the one beautiful bill? I mean, you knew of these security issues then. Why not get them to sign off? I think there's people in the Trump administration that want to show off their power to act unilateral of Congress, and because otherwise this would have passed. This budget, given the security needs identified in the brief, it would have passed. So I don't understand why they didn't do that.
Well, he had a small victory, Robert, on the international. What was it? The
International Court of
Commerce.
Trade.
They have deemed his tariffs, his rescinding of an exemption on tariffs for
what's called de minimis exceptions and exemptions from otherwise tariff law.
So bottom line is that if a good was under $800, it was de minimis exemption of tariffs. You didn't have to pay tariffs on it. And a lot of small businesses rely on this as their means of doing business. He rescinded that exemption and it was challenged. And they said, this is different than when you use the IECAA. What was the line?
IEAEA, the International whatever energies.
This is different. This is different than when he used the emergency tariff law, whatever the hell it was, to impose a tariff. They said you can't do that for blanket tariffs across all countries, but you can use it to remove an exemption that had previously been afforded for this type of whatever it was, the $800
for any other pre-existing tariff, because the Congress itself delegated that explicit authority to the president, said that the president could remove it whenever he wanted, could grant it whenever he wanted, could remove it whenever he wanted. So here there was no question that Congress gave him broad authority, and thus International Court of Trade recognized that. And the problem was a lot of these de minimis exceptions were being abused in order to funnel tons of goods into the U.S. And he just broke them up into separate $800 under goods, and thus avoiding and escaping the various, like Timu style, various tariffs that are supposed to be imposed. So I think it was the correct decision, and this was one where they did well. I mean, a lot of this could have been mooted had he gone through Congress to get a tariff approval, which we had shown in the polling that showed if he replaced the federal individual income tax and eliminated it on individuals, particularly individuals in, other than, say, the richest 5% of the country, that he could thereby pay for the tariffs, which would help rebuild industrial policy, but it would require a standardized policy and not something that he could change on a whim.
And for that reason, he didn't want it to go through Congress, even though the approval of that idea was off the charts in the survey done by 1776 Law Center. So some of these legal problems he's brought on himself by somebody, either him or others in the administration, wanting to assert executive authority to such a degree that was unnecessary to achieve the policy ends.
All right, we're going to take the party over to locals at the risk of being even further punished on CommuTube. Apparently, they're coming down on funneling, which is when you say, hey, guys, come over to another website on CommuTube. Come over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. I pinned it in CommuTube regardless, because if 2.5 hours on CommuTube does not allow us to say, come to our private communities and be a part of them, they can, I got 2 middle fingers for them. It's pinned up there in locals as well. Neurodivergent, thank you very much. We're going to go raid No Treason Podcast, Badlands Media. I like them, and he's a good guy. He's live now. Do that. Robert, what do you have coming up this week?
So we got 3 cases we'll discuss. Federal courts tried to limit the ability of the Trump administration to detain illegal immigrants arrested in the United States. Texas election law limiting the potential for fraud and mail-in balloting was finally restored by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals just in time for the upcoming November elections. And the Justice Department's effort to get voting records runs into some hurdles and obstacles, in this case in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, but their suggested remedy might be rather easy and simple beyond having to relitigate the whole case. I'll probably be on with Mario Knopfel, maybe Brandon Weichert, guest host often for Mario Knopfel on Monday. We may have a What Are the Odds on Monday, depending on what Barris's schedule is like with People's Pundit Daily, but otherwise we'll be available all week at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We'll have nightly bourbons, or hopefully I'll figure out what the heck is. I'm not a boomer, but I do play one with technology, so I need this is technology to fix it.
It's obviously beyond your control. It's either a computer issue or an internet issue, but based on the fact that it didn't happen this time at all, probably a computer issue, maybe just a reboot.
It must be a computer. It's like a big fancy computer, but I did have a power outage, so maybe that did something to that computer.
You refer to it as a big fancy computer is a sign of boomerism. Okay, we're gonna go over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. I'm gonna have on Dr. Shiva tomorrow. I think I might have James Fish back on. I was trying to do something in person, but I don't think we can do it. His election is on Tuesday. And stay tuned. It's going to be the standard stuff coming out next week. Our after parties on locals. So we are ending on CommuTube right now. No, I want to remove it. I don't want to be there. Hold on a second. Ending on CommuTube, remove.